Hello and welcome to the Tetracast. This is RPG Site's weekly podcast where we get the site staff together to discuss our favorite genre of video games. I'm the one driving this bus. My name is Brian Vitale, and I've got a crowd of people here today. We have 6 people here, including myself, ready to talk over each other about a bunch of games that have come out recently or are coming out soon in some cases. And I don't know how to introduce this gaggle of people here. We've got Adam Vitale alongside.
Hello.
I've got James Galizio.
Hey, folks.
We've got George Foster.
Hello, everyone.
Josh Torres returns.
What's our favorite genre of video game that we like to play?
I don't mean to make assumptions, but I just, I felt like it was a safe bet. Maybe not.
Puzzle.
Why are you here? And finally, we've got Cullen Black joining us for the first time in several months. So welcome back, Cullen.
The Bravely Second Enjoyer has logged on.
Yep. Bravely Second,
Special
I do
guest.
think might be, yes, he is our special guest specifically just for this.
Resident Bravely Second enthusiast is here on site.
So we've got a whole bunch of games from Bravely Second to some Yakuza to Final Fantasy, a whole bunch of things to talk about when we are going ahead into the first section of this podcast. And I don't know who to pick or how to pick what we're going to talk about first. Should we allow Cullen to go first, or should we make him wait a bit? I don't know.
Let's talk about Bravely. He pitched it forth.
I wanted to talk because I've been playing a couple games. I'll save one of those games for Josh's section because I'm just giddy about that. But I wasn't here last. I think it was last week when you guys talked about East 9, but. Love East 9.
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago? Oh, I've lost track of time.
I think it's both weeks. You're both correct.
Okay, cool. 3 weeks in a row. Let's do it. I won't talk about it long. Everything that needs to be said has been said. Love East 9. Going to play that on every system it becomes available on because that's
I'm probably gonna replay it on PC. Like, yeah, I really enjoyed my time with that, and I would like to. I'm really interested to see the PC version, what kind of enhancements it'll get. Like, if it gets like a big boost in draw distance on PC, that would be for me.
Maybe just like any amount of anti-aliasing. That'd be cool.
That'd be great.
Again, wonderful game. Technical aspects, though, Falcom does not know how to optimize, and it's very apparent. But it's really good. It's one of those things where it's really good despite its problems. Like my review, a bunch of people were saying like, yeah, but look, it looks like a PS3 game. It's like, yeah, but it's good though. Like,
I don't even know what that means. Like when people say, "Oh, that looks like a PS2 game," I'm like, man, I fucking love the PS2. Hell yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's like it clearly doesn't look like a PS3 game, but I get what you mean. But also, like, come on.
But I like
PS2 is fucking dope because you have so many of these like weird games that you just never see nowadays.
Yeah, man.
It's a really good game. I'm so morbidly curious on how that Switch version's gonna run. Like, if anything, since it got announced, I've been more excited to see how it'll run on Switch than playing the game itself.
Right, because this game hasn't come to Switch yet. Like when it was initially released in Japan, that was like PS4 only. So the Switch and everything.
So I think I'm pretty sure it's Engine Softworks who were doing the port for that because I think they did the port for Cold Steel 3 and 4 as well.
Did East 8 come to Switch? I forgot.
It did.
Okay.
It wasn't the best port, but it was all right.
Yeah, it wasn't the best. It wasn't the worst, but it is still the best way to play that game portably.
Until
if you have a GPD Win 3, you could probably play the
no
PC
one has a
Look at this
GP
nerd.
Win 3. Yeah. If you have a portable computer handy, then you can play it at 1000K
Okay, now I feel bad. Now I feel
gigaframes.
like we've crossed the line.
I'm kidding. I didn't mean to bully.
Here's some context here. So Josh Torres has reviewed Yeast 9 for our site. Cullen did review Yeast 9 for his personal channel on YouTube. And James imported the game, has played it a long time ago, and revisited it once the PS5 came out.
And did an import review for us. So.
Oh yeah, and also the import review. So a bunch of opinions on Yeast 9.
George is also playing through it. How far are you, George?
I am on chapter 7.
Wow.
I'm following you guys. Like, this game is bloody ace. I don't think I'm as enamored with it as you guys are, but I think that's because it's my first one. Like, it's definitely enough to make me want to go back and revisit.
But that's exciting though, that to hear that this is your first one. It's like, you don't need to have like played all the other Isas before to like have fun with this game, and that's really exciting to hear from your perspective.
Yeah, like I think it's one of the best action RPG combat systems I've played since like Kingdom Hearts 2. In my opinion, like that is what drives me forward. I like all the characters, I like the world, but like the combat specifically, I just love it. I think of playing it like a harder difficulty after. Like that is how much I'm liking it at the moment.
I definitely recommend when you do go back and catch up, play 9 again because you'll just love it more. Like it's one of those where it's like you don't need.
The more you've played of the series, the more that 9 is going to hit you with the ending.
Yeah, like it hit me hard, but that's just because I'm a simp for Adol.
You're giving the poor boy so much homework.
George was mentioning.
Oh come on! You can play East 1 in a weekend.
Don't play East 1.
It's good.
Don't play East 1. I'm
getting some conflicting
East 1 and 2 Chronicles.
Don't play East 1 and 2.
No,
I'm definitely gonna play 8. I'm definitely gonna play 8.
Yeah, do play 8. 8 is Kino.
Conversely, I think you should play both East Chronicles 1 and East Book 1.
Well, Memories of Salcedo.
I was just going to say, I know I shouldn't play Memories of Salcedo.
Stop playing the series.
No, George, I was mentioning earlier because you were talking about the movement, and then it just reminds me that Falcom, whenever they get an interview about the East series, they always say that the first thing they always do with the East title is like make sure the movement is fun. So like the very early builds of a new East title, whatever it is, it's always Adol and just moving around and like, does this feel good?
Well, this is what not worries me. I know that East 8 doesn't have the same movement systems, but I can't imagine it feeling quite as good now. You know, like it feels so good in 9 with all the abilities you get that I kind of think that going back to
different. It's different.
East 8 is still like it's still fun to move around in East 8, but that's because Adol's movement feels like it's more versatile in horizontal environments at East 8. So it's just a different level design philosophy. Unlike in East 9, where outside the Monstrum abilities and what you do, like if you're just playing like, you know, just Adol himself without his Monstrum powers, like it feels very unsatisfying until you start using the movement abilities. Unlike in East 8, like his jump feels so much better. Like moving around horizontally just feels like even more snappier than East 9. But East 9 is really good, just like, you know, scaling down up and down really well.
Yeah, there's like you have to when you're playing East 8, you do have to like be like, okay, this was a Vita game. But having said that, it's a goddamn good Vita game.
When's East 10?
Who knows? Hopefully soon, though. I kind of want to get want us to get a good version of East 5 first.
Yeah,
I would love if maybe Kuro is East 10.
Yep.
Do that.
I mean, he all has blue hair now, so you never know, man. But yeah, the East 5 is what's the best way to play East 5 these days?
There's only one version. It's the shitty SNES version.
Okay,
there's a PS2 version, and that's shitty too, apparently.
Okay, the PS2 version is better. So it's probably the best version is the PS2 version.
And that was
the only one I haven't played. And it's like
Konami. Konami brought that over, I think.
No.
Yeah, it never got brought over.
It wasn't Konami that did that one.
Konami did 6 for the PS2.
Oh, right. Okay, that was 6.
George, look what you've gotten yourself into.
Yeah, I'm so sorry, guys.
But it's 35 years. Like, can you imagine, George? This series has been around for 35 years.
I'm definitely on the train for whatever's next now. 8 next for me, but I don't know how far back I'll go. It's the same sort of argument I had with Yakuza. It's like I really want to go back and play all these games, but there are just too many games. There are too many.
In terms of availability,
East Origin.
You should be able to play East Origin. That'll give you you can play that on a PS4 or Switch, right?
Play it on Switch, and actually, I'd say the Switch is the best console port.
And it kind of gives you a taste of the other ones. Like a lot of the other games are like most easily accessible on PC, even if they're not like. I know you don't really want the game on PC.
Probably like that.
To be fair, you can play pretty much all of the PC ones on any PC. Like you can even get like Wine set up on like a Chromebook, and you'd be able to play it fine. Because I played my first playthrough of Origin on Wine, so.
Okay.
Yeah, my advice is don't like feel pressured or rush yourself to them. Just like if you ever feel like playing an action RPG, just like, hey, let's go try out this one. And I'd recommend, like they were saying earlier, is try after you go to East 8 or you beat that or you fall off of it or whatever. Try to play East titles that all have like differences. It's like East Origin is very different than how it plays compared to like East 1, where like East 1 and 2 are like if you can imagine, it's like a overhead view, and then you just bump into enemies. You just put your character model into enemies. And like,
I was gonna say, George, have you heard of the bump combat?
The bump combat is great, man. I have such fond memories of bump.
Are there any like what other series have been going on for long enough that you can kind of like group together games into like different eras, like the bump
Final
combat
Fantasy?
era? I guess
Final
a lot
Fantasy.
of series, huh? But I was actually thinking Fire Emblem. Like there's like pre genealogy, the Holy War Fire Emblem, and then there's like that through Radiant Dawn, and then there's like Awakening on. Like you can like kind of group them together into like, just because you enjoyed the most recent entry, you gotta have to know some things if you, depending on how far back you want to like drill into older games in the series.
If you want rock solid, consistent gameplay systems, Dragon Quest. They will never move on.
Yes. Yes. Oh, I was going to
Dragon Quest just because Colin's here. Go ahead,
I was going to say, speaking of Final Fantasy, I've been playing Bravely Default 2.
Yeah, isn't that the reason we went to you in the first place?
Yeah. George had to keep us talking about East 9.
You know me.
So Bravely Default 2 obviously is releasing later this month on the 26th, but Colin has had some early access with the game, and he's sharing with us his initial feelings and thoughts and opinions and anything else.
It's good.
There we go.
Question mark?
Yeah, so here's the thing. I've played 30 hours of it. I'm very limited of what I can actually talk about. I wrote a very broad synopsis of it in my preview. There are definitely things I'm enjoying a lot. I like the characters. I love the localization. The voice acting is stellar. It's some of the game balancing choices are very weird. I'm talking around like stuff, and I'm sorry if that'll make this whole segment feel very strange. Disjointed, yeah. Asterisk bosses are brutally difficult, and I'm not sure if they just didn't playtest them.
That bad, huh? Wow.
That's I've actually heard that from CD who's reviewing this game on his own website.
Alex Seedhouse from Nintendo Insider.
Yeah, Alex. CD and I have been talking about it because I'm 30 hours in, and CD was messaging like, "Oh, I'm almost done with chapter 1." I'm like, "Oh boy." I think the difficulty gets a lot more manageable as the game goes on, and I don't know if that's because the balancing is fixed or if I've just found out how to break the game.
I have one question just to kind of set the table. Have you played the other two games, Bravely Default and Bravely Second, or have you not?
Okay, so I don't like Bravely Default.
Okay.
Because I don't like the characters, but I love Bravely Second, so I'm a weird outlier. So and one of the things that's been very worrying for me is in a lot of the marketing, like a lot of the interviews, they've been saying like, "Oh yeah, Bravely Second sucks. We're sorry for making that. We're gonna make this one like different." I'm like, but I like that one.
I don't think Bravely Second is necessarily a bad game too. I think the gameplay in Bravely Second is way more fun than Bravely Default.
Oh
like
yeah.
The only problem I had with Bravely Second was like it just kind of reused too much of the same like assets and areas and like the same flow as the first ones. Like when I want a sequel or a follow up, I want it to like be like you're doing brand new or visiting brand new stuff. And Bravely Second is just too much of a retread. But I like, I really like the classes in Bravely Second, and I like the characters in it.
Oh yeah, like I think the thing was Bravely Second was a big failure in Japan, and no one liked it for some reason. So they're kind of
it was
trying to appease older fans, and I think by saying that they're hoping that like some like the hardcores fans are gonna be like, "Oh wow, so it's not like that bad one I don't like," but it's like, but for Bravely Second fans, you're kind of alienating them. But I guess
Well,
so I'm an outlier
I'm gonna say this about Bravely Second situation is that they did some really funky stuff like immediately after the Japanese release with the Western release. I'm not talking about like censorship shit, but it used to be in the Japanese version of Bravely Second that some of the side quests that you did on the first half of the game would end in a way that wasn't a happy ending, and then the second half they would end in a good way. Whereas in the Western version, they just cut out the first conclusion to the side quest, so you basically just did the same, like you had the same conclusion both times. So
I think though that was supposed to like save time. I read someone say that like I read from someone like that's actually like a good thing they did, but I'm not.
Yeah, I think people had like a reaction when they heard that they were changing something, like, oh no, this is censorship, and it's like actually this was feedback from what they were saying, from what they got from Japanese players.
Yeah, but
how they had to do I feel twice. So they kind of just put a Band-Aid on it and like, actually, we'll make it so you only have to do them once.
Yeah, I don't think that was the perfect way of handling it, considering it like thematically it didn't fit. But yeah,
I'm with James here because I can understand from a localization standpoint why you would do that to like kind of save cost, save time. Like it might even give like the consumer like a better enjoyment out of it, but it's kind of betraying what the developers put forth in the first place too, which is kind of weird. And also like aside from that too, just the localization of Bravely Second had like some weird stuff, like obviously replacing the Native American class with the cowboy or cowgirl. I forgot. It's like it had like weird issues around localization as well. That was very glaring and like
I completely forgot about that. Now that you mention it, I'm like, oh, I never forgot about that. Like, I haven't thought about that in years. But as an outsider to this series, like, so I am totally planning on playing Bravely Default 2. I have not played the first two games, but I like the one sentence like summary that seems to be like the consensus is that Bravely Default's first half is good, its second half is bad, and Bravely Second is bad. And I know Cullen just said that not everyone thinks that, but that just seems to be like the conventional wisdom. Like, hopefully Bravely Default 2 is like the first half of the first game, I suppose.
So it's very difficult to talk about this because I know why people say it's bad.
We can learn more like and like when it's actually out, but just first impressions when you first went into it. Like tell us about that. Like just
I just wanted to say like this is not spoilers at all. This is just a fear I have of the game, and I've been like stressing out about this as I play because in my opinion, I think the worst thing Bravely Default 2 can be is safe. Yeah, and Bravely games are known for late game crazy wacky twists, and I'm a little worried that it might not go in that direction. And that sounds so weird, like, oh, I want like crazy wacky nonsense, but it's fun. Like, it's just I play these games for a fun time. So I'm wondering, and I say this in my preview even, I don't know where it's going. Like, I have no idea where this game is going. And how it sticks the landing is going to decide how much I enjoy it.
Yeah. Wow.
Because, and I'll get into like, impressions, experiences, but that's really the main thing. I'm enjoying the game a lot. It's very slow to get going. It's very much a take your time kind of game.
Let me see if I got the right read on this. So it's like you're enjoying the journey. You just hope it actually leads somewhere.
Yes. I am quite enjoying the journey despite some very weird game design choices here and there. Side quests are a very big thing that they've introduced because side quests in Bravely games, I always liked them because they're very focused. It is, okay, this side quest will get you a new job, and they'll have little mini adventures for you to go on. And then second, they make it even cooler where you pick the jobs you get. Like, the side quest will end in a certain way, and you'll get a different job from that. And I love that. So, Bravely Default 2 takes a more modern game design approach to it, where they're just legit side quests. Like, people ask you to go do stuff or kill monsters. And Some of them will end in jobs, but very rarely do they do that. Like I say in my preview, though, while the side quests are mostly like a mixed bag, there's a lot of like, oh hey, I need you to go talk to my brother on the other side of town. And then you talk to the brother, and it's like, okay, can you go talk to my brother and tell him thank you? And you go back to the brother, and you're going back and forth for like 20 minutes. And sometimes instead of a town, it's like go walk to that dungeon back and forth. Or it's like gathering quests.
Is there like any like sort of fast travel when it's like in between cities?
Okay, so there is fast travel between the cities, but it's in like a wagon at the beginning of the city. I wish that Dragon Quest has really spoiled me. I wish I could just hit I could just cast Zoom and then just go to a city immediately. God, I wish. I love Dragon Quest.
So one thing that Colin's brought up that I want to make sure I give the proper shout out is that he did publish a preview for Bravely Default 2, and he organized it like a listicle. It's Bravely Default 2, 5 things I love and 2 things I'm unsure about. So a lot of these you've already touched on here in the podcast, the combat, the exploration, and you've also talked a little bit about like the quests and the localization, especially. Oh, yeah. One thing that we've avoided that I've seen a lot of people talk about is how do you feel about how the game looks? Because some people make it well known or really show that they are not vibing with the art style here.
Okay, so it is. When I say it's a mixed bag, I don't mean I think it in a negative way. I think the main the 2D cities are gorgeous. They're just as amazing as they ever were, if not even better. The dungeons are beautiful. The world map is so cool. It's the character models that a lot of people have an issue with.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, though, the monster designs are like crazy good, but it's just people the game seems to have a problem with. The main cast looks good. A lot of the side characters don't. Personally, I never hated it enough to have an issue with it. But I definitely get where people are coming from. I like it, but I know that like it could be better, and I think the other aesthetic from the DS games looks better.
I think there were also like it's one of those games where it looks underwhelming at some points when you take a screenshot, but in motion it looks.
Oh yeah.
I think I was about. It does look better in motion from what I've seen. Like some of the effects that they have.
They definitely took a lot of their experience. I'm pretty sure it's the same team. I know this is Playtech Works, but it definitely seems like someone who worked on Octopath brought over some of their knowledge of like visual effects.
I'm not sure about that. So let's just set this straight here. The Bravely Default and Bravely Second were developed by Silicon Studio, and they no longer make games. They now do like engine software, graphics stuff. This game is being developed by Claytech Works, who previously did like the Bravely Default Fairies Effect mobile game that was Japanese only.
Interesting.
So it's actually, a mobile game developer.
Was it actually only just Japanese? I think they actually localized it, but it shut down.
I totally forgot.
Yeah.
So and then Octopath was made by Acquire. Now the Square Enix like production side of that like team is the same. It's Asano, I think. They do a lot of like this third party like setup and development.
Type in and say that I was talking with Colin last night, and we found out that one of the writers on Octopath is a writer on Bravely Default 2.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I imagine that there are some carryover, like some Silicon Studio people or maybe some Square Enix people did work on both. But I'd be surprised if it was like the meat of the team is probably mostly.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I'm like, it seems like it is at least taking inspiration from the cool visual effects going on. There's a lot of like, I don't know how else to describe it. Like maybe like a bit of depth of field going on in a lot of the dungeons.
Just because a person or specific talent didn't transfer, that doesn't mean like the knowledge or the know-how or the other things were not handed over. My personal opinion on how this game looks is that even though I do think it looks quite a bit different from what I'm used to or expecting, I kind of like find that maybe this is like, I don't know, almost hipster, but I kind of like, you know what, let the game be different. I don't like, I'm glad it kind of stands out and they're trying something that not another game looks like there are so many art styles this game could have picked to play it like very safe. And then you wouldn't even like remark on it. It's like, oh, of course it looks like that. It's a JRPG from Square Enix or whatever. So like, I don't know if I'm sold, but I am like, I do appreciate that it's like, you know what, we're, Claytech Works, it's in our name. We're going to have this almost like stop motion style art to it, even though
and that's what I like about it. Yeah, it's like it definitely there you do get like this clay aesthetic going on from a lot of the different monster designs and even the world, and I think it does give it this very unique charm. And I think I have no proof for this. This is just going off what I like. I think it feels like they've updated the lighting engine a little bit since the final demo and the other demo as well, and it looks better. Like a lot of the cutscenes with the characters, like the just standard, like all the characters here in the text box, it looks a bit better on the eyes. I have no proof for this. I'm sure if you compared them, it's like there's no change at all, Cullen. And it's like, well, I was wrong, but it looks like they've improved it since then. I'm hoping that I like where it's going. I'm enjoying the the job system's so good. Like you can't really mess up the job system.
Is there
if
a bad game with a job system?
I don't know, because it's really just like you put the job system in there, and at the very worst, you're gonna have a fun time.
There were also changes like the flow of combat, so it's not like round based anymore. It's actual.
It's HD, which is interesting. The weird thing about the combat is a lot of my grievances with how things have been playing out, I've gotten either used to or they've improved as I've played the game. So I'm not entirely sure. Writing this review is going to be weird. I don't know, because I don't know.
What is your
changing?
Maybe you need a simple question answer. What is your favorite job so far, if you're allowed to tell us?
I'm trying to think, like,
this is an easy one.
I don't think my embargo is like saying you're not allowed to talk about the jobs.
They've been also showing off jobs too, like in the marketing of this game.
Yeah,
I think that. He's looking over the embargo, I think.
Well, that, and I'm also seeing if they revealed the job already. Okay, so I love Dragoon.
Okay.
I'm a big Dragoon fan.
Dragoons are cool.
Always have been. Love that feeling of falling right on my face. But I have to say, like, Monk is probably one of the most busted jobs in the game.
Oh, hell yeah. I love a good Monk job.
And it's like the first job you get.
Okay, all right.
Well, it's very early, and like I think I'm allowed to talk about that because it's like it's in the demos, like the Monk class, and it's just, oh boy, that can take you far.
That's exciting.
Were you going to say something, Adam?
I have kind of a nerdy question. So, how are the dungeons? Are there like dungeons in this game? The reason why I ask is because like both Bravely and Octopath have this sort of like dungeon design where it's just sort of like a tunnel, and you like go through the tunnel, and there's like maybe some like dead end paths that lead to treasure chests, and that's kind of like it. Like that's their dungeon design. Just you go through like these tunnels.
There are the tunnels still, but I think there have been a lot more of like big open areas. I like the dungeons. I'm a little worried that they might overstay their welcome a bit too much. And I think that's fine. Let's literally, I can talk about that. That's the thing. I'm like, what can I talk about? My embargo details are very vague, but it's saying like, it's basically saying, don't talk about anything after chapter 2. And I can definitely say the dungeons sometimes they go on a bit too long. And I like them, but this is definitely one of those games. If you go to JRPGs for like kind of more of a mix of like story and combat, or like you prefer the story heavy JRPGs, there's a lot of fighting in this game. You'll be having battles a lot. This is
it's no longer random encounters, so you don't have like a slider for random encounters. You actually see like the enemy model out in the overworld, and you can like hit it.
And they can like if you. One thing I really love though is if you get too strong for an area, enemies will run away from you. So it's a good like sign of your progress, and you can be like, all right, cool, I'm probably ready for the boss now, and then you're not ready for the boss because the boss shot you.
That sounds like a very Final Fantasy III problem, because I remember when I was going through Final Fantasy III 2 weeks ago, I would get to the point where enemies and dungeons were running away from me, but I was still getting my ass handed to me by the boss.
It's I'm very interested to see what public opinion is on this when it's out. And at the same time, I'm very happy that I get to play it in my own little bubble without anyone else's opinions kind of infecting mine. Because I think out of like me and CD and like anyone else playing, I'm pretty far. I don't know if I'd say I'm the farthest. It's impossible to tell, but I'm a decent way in, and I'll probably finish it in a couple of days if I keep at my current pace. Honestly, as soon as I'm done with the podcast, I'm just going to go play more.
How late did you stay up last night playing this?
6 a.m.
Oh,
Very good.
all right.
Recording this at noon for what it's, or I guess for you it might depend, but a few hours
3
later.
PM. I woke up 3 hours ago.
Final question for me on this wonderful Bravely Default 2 section. Revo is back as the music composer. Yay or nay so far?
Yay. I mean, I kind of prefer. Like, I like Revo stuff in Bravely Default. I think it's very good. Final boss track in particular bangs. I've always preferred the second soundtrack.
That is the real hot take here.
Yeah, I know. Again, I want like that's why I said I don't dislike Bravely Default's music. I like Rio, and I especially the Bravely second like opening theme. I think that's really good. This is really good music. I think surprisingly enough, I think where the soundtrack excels is a lot of the quieter music, like quieter moments or like the sad stuff. The main boss theme is good. I just not really clicking with me as much. It's overall good. I hope it continues to get better.
So it sounds like you're generally pretty positive on this game, with just a few caveats about the balance and maybe about a lot of things that you can't really judge until you see if there's a payoff in terms of the narrative.
Oh yeah, that's why I said it's good.
Good question mark.
I don't think I'm not sure it'll be game of the year, or like anything like that, but I'm enjoying it, and it's made me want to actually play Final Fantasy V.
Speaking
of Final Fantasy V,
good segue
Final
again.
Fantasy V is a 10 out of 10 JRPG.
Oh wow! Hell yeah, that's it.
It's very good.
For anyone who needs a little context, sorry, just James, who I feel like we're transitioning to right now, has been in the middle of a marathon playing through all of the Final Fantasy games in order, and I guess he's gotten on to Final Fantasy V. There, I just want to set the table.
That segue was a splinter stuck inside the conversation.
Oh yeah,
this is why we bring you on, because we're no good at this normally.
I'm not good at it either. Don't worry.
Yeah, so I've been generally enjoying what I've been playing with my Final Fantasy marathon, but none of the games have really stuck with me, I'd say. Like, I enjoyed 4, but like looking back on it, it's a very messy game in retrospect. Especially like the story itself. It's like, hey, that it's like engaging in the moment, but then you look back on it, it's like, wow, that series of events doesn't make a lot of sense, does it? Final Fantasy V is pretty much better than Final Fantasy IV in every way.
Oh boy.
The story is better.
I agree. I don't think that's a common opinion, but I do agree.
I agree. Okay.
I think the story's better. I think the character interactions are much better. I feel like the way that I know that the way that the character interactions are done and the way that the story evolves a lot more naturally in Final Fantasy V is really good game design. And I love how they utilize like many of the game's systems to really push the story forward. You had a bit of that in Final Fantasy IV with the whole like Dark Knight to Paladin thing that everyone talks about. But that's like the one major time it's really utilized. you have cutscenes where you see like the battle system through the point of view of like NPCs, which is interesting enough in 4, but there's moments in 5 that really take advantage of the battle system, both in a mechanical level, like the Atomos or Atomos boss fight, and the way that it deals with the row system. And then, okay, so just to make things clear, and Adam will know exactly what I'm talking about when I say this, I got to the third world.
Mm-hmm.
So you probably know what I'm talking about when I say the way that they utilize the game systems to tell the story is just amazing. It's one thing I really like is that the pacing is fantastic, and it never really feels like you're being forced to stay in any one area longer than's necessary, and it feels like the game always has something new to throw at you. Like when you're going for the fire crystal and you have to escape the castle in a time limit that's actually 10 minutes, and it like keeps going on in battles. So you see the time limit in the battles, so you're always having to worry, okay, so I want to loot this castle before it blows up, but I need to be very careful because I do have a legitimate time limit. And it's always going on, even in menus. I love the way that the job system works in Final Fantasy V because of the way that you unlock abilities the more that you level up each job. And you can, for every job, you can add one extra ability, and it gives you a lot of flexibility to make builds that are very easy to break the game over your knee, but it feels really fun to do so because it gives you a lot of freedom in how you make your party, even if you want to go with mostly magic-like users or mostly physical attackers and stuff like that.
I know some people do like take that balance argument as like an argument to why the game isn't very good, but I kind of just disagree. Whenever you have, I think almost inevitably, when you have a system as flexible and as freeform as Final Fantasy V is, that allows you to like do so much with it, especially considering the time it was released, you're inevitably going to get some combinations that are just like legitimately overpowered. But it's fun to find those.
That reminds me, when we're done with the podcast, no matter when I pop out, I need to tell you guys how I've been destroying the difficulty of Bravely Default 2 in relation to the job system. Because like you said, you can combine jobs that just, all right, you win.
Well, I think it's okay to talk about these two games kind of like in parallel like this because they have that, you know, that very core component in common.
So
it's still
the one thing I want to stress about Final Fantasy V is the character interactions. Like, I wasn't expecting this much, but there's a bunch of different like optional character interactions where if you go to, like, if you do specific things in a world that you could totally miss, you might have little cutscenes. Like if you go to Bart's hometown and you stay the night there, you'll have a little scene where where he goes to his parents' graves, and you even see a bit of like a character interaction between him and I believe it's Ferris. Yeah, Ferris. Yeah. And then later on, you have stuff like if you stay at an inn at I think it's Quelb or something.
I'll be honest and say I don't really remember all the towns.
Yeah, well, if you stay at a specific inn, you have like this one little cutscene with Galoof and Bart's, and it's really just they're such small scenes, but the fact that they're completely optional and you can miss them and they don't overstay their welcome, but they really sell the feeling of it being a party. And I guess one of the reasons that works so well for 5 is that for the whole game, most of the game, you have basically the same party. Whereas in 4, like it was a very Final Fantasy 2 type deal where you're constantly swapping out party members, so you never really get too much of an attachment to any one of them.
So James, it sounds like you're saying you like butts.
No, he's saying Bart's, dude. I was about to ask him earlier if he was a Butts or Bart's fan.
Yeah, but do you like butts?
You don't have to answer that.
I'm just asking if you like
what
butts.
version of the game are you playing, James?
I'm playing Final Fantasy V Advance.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's a good version of that.
The localization's very good for it. There are a few moments where I feel like it gets a little punched up a bit too much, maybe. But the vast majority of the time, the localization is just fantastic.
I think it's a testament to FF5's design that even today, like, even today, people still run that like Fiesta Festival event for just specifically for that game, just randomizing the jobs that they get and seeing, how they can play the game with whatever.
Oh yeah. Now that I've actually played it, I can totally see why it has such a large speedrunning community, because it's very replayable. Like, there's so many different jobs, and you get them all. You basically get all of them so early on that you have a lot of freedom for how you want to play the rest of the game. And I haven't even talked about the stuff like the Blue Mage, where you can get a bunch of different like spells by literally like going around the world and finding monsters that do them. And it's like basically a side quest in and of itself as a job.
And that's how you see like even parallels, like like how FF14 like adopted that into their system. It's like, oh yeah,
Blue Mage shows up in a lot of the games now.
Yeah, but it's FF5 just an overall just one of the biggest highlights of Final Fantasy games overall to me.
I feel like the story is like really good. It's not the hugest focused. It's goofy, but it's funny because as grimdark as Final Fantasy IV tries to be and like edgy, like so many of the deaths turn out to be like just fake outs. And in Final Fantasy V, the people that do sacrifice themselves and die, they stay dead. Yep. So, like, even though Final Fantasy V is a goofier game, it feels a lot more mature, if that makes sense.
Some real stakes.
I don't know.
I do think Final Fantasy IV is a little silly. How there's like a whole sequence of fake out deaths.
Yeah, there's like
it over relies on them, and then
there's the one that really got me is like, I guess this is technically a spoiler. Colin, have you played Final Fantasy IV?
Yes.
Okay. When Sid blows himself up to seal the underground, then you find out, okay, I was actually fine all along.
Oh yeah, that's dumb.
Yeah.
That's just
or the thing with Yang doing the same thing. It's like, oh, I was fine. And then the whole thing with the twins like where they turn themselves into stone statues. And if you even go and try and like unstone them, it says it had no effect because they turned themselves to stone of their own will. But later on it said, oh, we got cured by the elder. It's like, but
I got better.
you know a game that has like a lot of fake out things in its fourth entry. Yakuza?
I thought you were gonna say Cold Steel 4.
It's both.
Yes, it's both, especially.
Is this a transition?
Well, I don't want to obviously cut you short, but so yes, I will be talking about Yakuza next because I've been making my way through Yakuza 4. But I don't, like I said, let's make sure we cover what we want to on Final Fantasy V. I wanted to make a comment, and I'm going to throw another Final Fantasy game under the bus. But we were talking about like how the systems in Final Fantasy V and Bravely Default 2, how they're combat focused, they're open ended. You can make a lot of choices about like, do I want to play mages? Do I want to play dragoons or whatever? And it's stuff like this that I'm like, yeah, I'm totally on board with that, and that's why I really didn't care for Final Fantasy 13. I feel like that's a bit out of left field to just take a chance to dunk on that, but that's exactly what that game doesn't have. You make like no meaningful choices. You use whatever party they give you with the abilities that those characters have, and it can be a lot more balanced because the developers and designers know exactly what you have access to. Like for any given boss fight, like, oh, you have access to Saboteur at this point, and you have access to these characters, so let's design the boss around that. So you don't run into the balance wonkiness, but I just find it a lot less fun to be like,
yeah, that's the big downfall of FF13. It's like it only really opens up like 40 to 50 hours in after you get like all your party members to have the freedom to actually make your own decisions. It's like it's a system that like it's really cool when you have full control over it, but they don't hand you that control till
I'm very curious how I'm going to feel about the later Final Fantasy games because of how contentious a lot of them are. But the one last thing I want to say about Final Fantasy V is that I definitely have a lot more of an appreciation for it after playing Final Fantasy III because I'm sorry, I'm sure even if I had played the NES version with the fan translation, I wouldn't have liked it as much as the first two. I feel like it's the first one with the job system, so I know it should get some respect for that. But the way the job system works in Final Fantasy III, it's an illusion of control because there's so many bosses where it's like you need to use basically a party of just X job where you are going to have a bad time.
Can you see why? Can you see now why? I think most people in the West probably played 5 before 3 because 5 came out on GBA.
Yeah.
Let me look up the dates, like in 2004 or something like that. And then in Final Fantasy 3 on DS came out later.
Well, it's kind of like these weird tiers because, like, obviously 4 and 6 were the first ones localized, like in the original run, and so therefore, out of that like family, that tier or grouping of games, I feel like those two are generally more known and beloved.
And in retrospect, and in retrospect, I can see why they skipped over 5 originally back in the day, because it's a very like mechanically complex game that if you hadn't played 3, it might have been confusing to you because it's like, what the hell is a job system? And it's like so much going on at once.
And
plus,
then
I'm sure they had to.
Sorry, go ahead.
And plus, I'm sure that by the time they were done with the Final Fantasy IV localization, they already knew that that 6 was going to be more like 4 or something like that.
And then you like the only people once these other, it feels like so long ago now, but there was a point where like we had to wait for these localizations, and then dedicated series fans had to like work their way backwards to be like, oh, now we finally get the chance to play 5. Oh, now we finally get the chance to play 3. So you've already lost like a good percentage of like the more casual RPG player. And then, like, how far back you go? Like, do I want to play a game as old as Final Fantasy 3 and 2? So it's just like it's like these stair steps where the number of people that have played Final Fantasy 2 and 3 is like probably a very, very small percentage.
So I looked up the release dates, and I actually did not realize this. Talking about North American dates, I'm going by Wikipedia here. Final Fantasy V Advance released November 6, 2006. Final Fantasy 3 DS released November 14th, 2006.
What the
fuck?
That's the GBA was weird because like when the DS came out, it was like a third pillar, right? And that's what Nintendo was calling it. To like the GBA kind of continued for a while.
Meme of like remember what they took from you, of just imagining an actual remake for Final Fantasy V that we could have gotten on DS.
I feel like, man, I'm even more mad that Final Fantasy V didn't get a PSP remaster like 4 did, because it's so good. I can understand why some people that maybe go back and play it today aren't as huge fans of it, because I can tell that if all of the Final Fantasy games you've played have been basically built off of the Final Fantasy IV formula and the games since then, like 6, 7, 8, 9, etc., I can see how 5 would be very different. And just because you're a fan of the later Final Fantasy games doesn't necessarily mean that you'll gel with 5. But and I kind of said this in like off the cuff last night with Colin, but I'm not sure how you feel about this, Adam. I feel like one of the reasons why I love Final Fantasy V is that it feels like it's the Final Fantasy that is most like a Dragon Quest in terms of tone.
Oh my god, yeah, you're right. I will love this.
It is true. Yeah. At a base level, that there is some truth to that, I think.
I really feel like people should have just said that to sell me on this game, because I've been ignoring 5 for ages when I played the again, I know, very bad mobile version, and I was just kind of like, the job system.
Ironically enough, now that I've played through a good chunk of 5, I feel like out of like the mobile versions of the Final Fantasy games, I feel like the sprite smoothing for the main characters works a bit better for Final Fantasy V because it's a more colorful game.
Oh yeah.
I still just wish it looked like the complete collection. That is the pinnacle of that style. Yeah. And I think we talked about this last week, but it's so weird how that style got like dunked on when it first released as being too clean or too smooth, and then like the mobile versions came up. Like, actually, it was fine.
Fuck no, go back.
Yeah, pretty much. Turn the knob back.
But yeah, Final Fantasy V is very good. Which I didn't expect to like it this much, because I was expecting I was going to love 6 because everyone says 6 is a masterpiece, and I'm sure it is. But 5, it's like, damn, this might actually end up being my favorite Final Fantasy.
James, have you played Chrono Trigger?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I was just gonna say, make sure to hit that on your way up, just because it feels kind of comfy in that like Square SNES RPGs.
You're not allowed to be here if you haven't played Chrono Trigger, just FYI.
Yeah, hey George.
Yeah, sorry guys.
George, play Chrono Trigger.
I've got too many games, guys. I've got like all of you.
You've already dumped the whole yeast.
On Twitch.
list on him. Not yet.
Oh, I have not dumped the whole East list on him. I dumped one game on him. East is a little inconsistent.
Let's go play Chrono Cross together, pal.
I'm playing it right now, and it's a game.
Chrono Cross is such a weird game.
We should have a Tetracast where all of us play through the Romancing Saga remasters / remakes, and then just have like a podcast about them.
No, the even better, just have a like a group like book club on that, but only for Unlimited Saga. That's it.
Well, we're gonna have to find someone to help teach us how to play that game.
No, we're just gonna have to go figure it out on our own. It'd be like the 100th episode later. It's like, I think this is how this works in the Unlimited Saga.
So, Yakuza?
Yakuza.
All right, so I feel a little bit out of place since we've been talking about like these classic or classically styled JRPGs, and here I am jumping in with Yakuza. But I guess that's what we get for kind of casting a wide net at this website. So I've 2 weeks ago I talked about finishing up Yakuza 3. I took a break last week, and then this week I'm about maybe just under halfway through Yakuza 4. So it feels weird that I can kind of see like the light at the end of the tunnel. Like just like a year ago, I'd only played like 0, 1, and 2, and now I played Like a Dragon, and now I have the opportunity to play the rest. So it feels like, I wonder if this is what James is going to feel when he's at like Final Fantasy 13 or whatever, and he can see like the finish lines in sight. So Yakuza 4, obviously this game is pretty different from the other games because it opens up with you controlling characters that are not Kiryu Kazuma or Goro Majima. You start out playing a character named Shun Akiyama, and I have no idea like what his general what the consensus opinion on him is.
Everyone loves Akiyama.
I love Akiyama.
Well,
I mean,
Brian is not a big fan of Akiyama at all.
I was not jiving with him at all. And I had an open mind, I thought, because I loved Ichiban, and I was like, all right, the series doesn't have to revolve around one character, and obviously it hasn't. Of course, I'm kind of playing them out of order, so it's a bit weird. But Akiyama, like, I just don't. The general, his character is basically someone who was destitute and homeless, and then day traded his way into billions, and then he uses his money to run basically a loan shark operation, but it's with the heart of gold. He does it to help people who he wants to see money change their lives, and I just feel like I'm not compelled by that. Just to be like,
he's a very unrealistic character, to be fair. Yes,
and then
I like his personality more than I like his gameplay style.
I love it.
It also helps that I'm pretty sure voiced by like Spike fucking Spiegel. And that charm just kind of oozes through.
I will say that Yakuza 4, it feels like a pretty big jump up from Yakuza 3. Going from, maybe that's just me acclimating, but going from Kiwami 2/7 to 3, I talked about how that was a bit like rough, and I expected it to be, and eventually I got used to it. Before, it feels like, man, this game still looks pretty nice. I don't know if it's just because I'm cranking up the resolution on PC or whatever, but it doesn't feel quite as dated as 3, just visually. So I don't know if that's just me getting used to it, but at this point, I'm in that kind of those 3, 4, 5, like that grouping of games, and it feels fine. It doesn't feel like I'm really traveling back. I mean, it was only like 9, 10 years ago, not forever. But Akiyama, I don't like the premise behind his character. He has this weird, he comes across like, I know better than you, and I will decide whether or not you get to get a leg up from your shitty situation. And then there's a very key moment in the story where he meets an important character who goes by Lily, and basically she comes to him and she's like, "Hey, I need 100 million yen, I believe the number is," and that's the most anyone's ever asked him for. And I can already kind of see how that ties in the future story. But basically, he says "All right, if you want this money from me, you have to A, become a hostess at the club I own, and then B, go on a date with me." And I'm just like, oh, I don't like that dynamic at all. That just feels very exploitative, very power dynamics not in a good place. The game, of course, plays it off like she ends up falling for him, or at least being receptive to his advances. So it's oh, it's okay. But I'm just ugh. I don't know. It just rubbed me the wrong way. And then it all climaxes at this scene where they're standing on a rooftop, and he says some really corny, cheesy, bad, awful line where he's like, "If money can really change people, maybe I can do something for you." And then like kisses her, and it's just like, was that supposed to be romantic? Like, I don't feel
This is
anything
where
about this.
This is where my condolences for you, because like in my opinion, Yakuza 4 and Yakuza 5 have like there's the two games in the whole series where it has the roughest stories lines.
Okay, but I do have more stuff to say, like positive on this game when you get away.
Let me just mention real quick. I'm just want to just throw this out there. I know he's not here, but Kazuma is like really, really huge on the Yakuza series, and like I know Yakuza 4 is also the one he's just like not a big fan of, just overall.
So, also just ignoring the character, the story of the first act, it feels like it kind of like flounders and goes nowhere for a good long time until like. So there's 4 characters, and I believe I know that they're divided into like 4 chapters each, and like nothing happens or nothing. I don't want to say nothing, but it feels like the pace is just so slow until part 4 of Akiyama's, and then they're finally like, remember, like, oh yeah, we have to eventually ramp this up into a Yakuza game. So then you go through like this complete like onslaught dungeon of fighting, like the conflict shows itself, and then all of a sudden you're like underneath Kamurocho fighting grunt after grunt after grunt, and like oh finally, like I feel like they could have interspersed this out a little bit more. It spends so much time like setting up the premise of these characters and this Akiyama's finance loan shark company, and I just feels like it could have been a bit snappier, faster. Maybe I just felt that way because I wasn't jiving with the characters at all.
Yeah, this is the weird part of like how Yakuza 3 I separate Yakuza 3 from 4 and 5, because while Yakuza 3's gameplay and like was like kind of weird, I really like the narrative side of Yakuza 3, how like it paces itself. Like once you spend the first like good hours of the game like running this orphanage for Kiryu, and then once Kamurocho gets back in the mix, that's when you get the story. But like at least Yakuza 3 has like a compelling like cadence to it between like the orphanage and like the people that in that town, and when he goes back to Kamurocho, like it doesn't feel like I was like not jiving with the story at all. Like I really like the antagonist of Yakuza 3 and gained a bigger appreciation for that when I replayed it last year. But Yakuza 4 and Yakuza 5, like in your case, like Yakuza 4, like I like the flow of combat way better in Yakuza 4 from 3, because Yakuza 3 was really rough in that aspect, and like the character systems progression, but just everything else outside of that, like Yakuza 4 is just like, oh man.
4 definitely feels better to play, and it does have a bit of a smarter implementation of like skill trees, not trees, but like you can pick and choose when you level up rather than just like filling bars with the XP. And then you might be able to like cynically argue that, well, Yakuza 3 has a slow opening too, and you like that one, and like I guess maybe then it's just like the fact that
there's a more like genuine like aspect to it, because like it's a real human story with how Yakuza 3 handles it, unlike Yakuza 4, where it's very, like you said, there are definitely slimy aspects about it. It's like, and it goes to a very it turns at some points to like a corny drama too.
Yeah, it just feels like this. Like, is money good or bad? It can be both. Like it doesn't do anything like compelling. And Yakuza 3 obviously deals with characters like Kiryu and Haruka that we obviously are aware of. And I do think like new characters that it introduces, like Riki, are more interesting and better characters. Anyways, I want to go on a positive note. When I get into part 2, where you start playing as Taiga Sajima, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And I kind of knew of this character because he does have a brief, again, playing games out of order, these things happen. He does have a brief, should I say that? He's a brief appearance in Yakuza 7.
Yeah.
So I was kind of aware of like generally who this character is, but not much else about him. And this is kind of an interesting thing. I was not expecting this game to tie into a component that's introduced in Yakuza 0. It's when talking about basically what happened in 1985. And obviously, the developers have placed Yakuza 0 as this sort of like, we want people to start here. So it kind of like introduces this idea of what happened in 1985. It involves Majima. And then you kind of learn exactly what you need to learn in that game. And then it doesn't feel like there's anything left open like where you have to, oh, am I missing a piece of information here? Because other people played 4 before this. And then you get Yakuza 4, you go into the second part where it reintroduces this character, and you're like, oh yeah, that's stuff from Yakuza 0. I played it just long ago where it was like starting to fade from my memory. But like, I just spent like several grueling hours of this game playing as people I didn't care about with a story that I thought was really bad, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, remember this other Yakuza stuff that was actually good? We're bringing that back. And so it was going into part 2 where he plays Saejima, I thought was really good, especially if you played Yakuza 0. And I know, again, most people, when Yakuza 0 first came out, played 4 and then 0. Weird series when you try to discuss like proper order to play it or whatever. But I just got to the point where I'm running around Kamurocho as his character, and he's very different from any other protagonist in the series so far. So that's kind of interesting. I don't think he plays as well, but it's still fine, I guess. Like I don't feel as down on Saejima's playstyle as I do on Akiyama's character, if that makes sense. Like,
yeah, Yakuza 4 is weird also because there are definitely like, you can make characters fun once you find like the one good combo they have and just spam it forever. That's
one way to do it.
That's how Yakuza 4 and Yakuza 5 are for me. It's like, you can explore what these characters can do, but they're definitely quote unquote right answers for what they can do. Like they have like combos that will do any in any situation, whether it's like a big group fight or it's a boss battle. They always have that one combo that's like, oh, this is way better than anything else they can do.
Yeah, so I'm still working my way. Like I just unlocked basically. I'm playing this game pretty completionist-y. That's an adverb, I guess. Is it? I don't know.
Sure.
Where I'm doing the pretty much all the sub stories, at least the ones that don't involve mini games. So I just got to the point where I unlocked all of the Saejima's story starts out pretty like on rails, where you start out like in a prison, and you can only like, there are obviously no like, that's not the typical Yakuza environment where you can kind of go anywhere and talk to people and complete their sub stories, and then it's kind of like on rails until you finally get back to Kamurocho. And then once you're there, it's like, all right, now this is Yakuza again. So have fun, go do sub stories, go play mini games. So I just got to that point with him. So I'm eager to see like how he like. Yakuza always has this weird dichotomy with like how the story portrays itself, and then like how these sub stories kind of act as like additional framework for like characters and how they think and how they feel, and in like removed from the context of the main drama. So I'm interested to see like how Saejima comes across in those, because they're usually a little bit more lighthearted, a little bit more wacky, which seems at odds with Saejima's character. So I'm interested to see like how that'll play out once I get through more of them.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see where you land on Yakuza 4.
Yep, Akiyama sucks. I'm sorry. I wasn't feeling him at all. Saejima seems pretty good. It's Yakuza. I'm having a good time. Like I wasn't expecting to go right from 3 into 4. I took a very tiny break between them, but I'm not feeling really quite burnt out. So I think, but sometimes when I was going from like Kiwami 1 to Kiwami 2, I definitely kind of felt a little bit of burnout. But I think 3 and 4 are different enough that it's kind of buffered that a bit. It hasn't felt quite so samey.
I recommend taking like a longer break from 4 to 5 because 5 is a very big game compared to the rest of the series. It's even longer than 0.
I've heard that people have described 5 to me as like bloated and like way too much. So excited to see that.
Yeah, I mean, once you get there, definitely report back. I'm really energized to hear you about it because I went through my Yakuza replays last year, and I'm like always excited for someone taking that journey.
Man, a bunch of us are just doing like marathons of series right now.
Well, I mean, that's what you're supposed to do in the early parts of the year, right?
Well, yeah, that's how I felt last year. It's like, there's not too much I have to really do, so let's just.
Which is funny because like this the early months of 2021 have been very packed.
Yeah.
So I guess I kind of have that Yakuza 6 March date in mind as like a deadline. It's like, all right, better. If I can knock out Yakuza 4 before Bravely Default 2, that'll be a nice little like get that out of the way. Makes it feel kind of like a chore in some ways, but I'm like, all right, let me just play this. Like I'm enjoying myself. Just get it through.
I like having deadlines because it motivates me inadvertently to like get a game like done, finished. It's like, okay, I want to be done by this date and whatnot. So that's kind
my
of
deadline for my Final Fantasy marathon is Endwalker's release date. God
Good luck
help
with
me.
that.
yeah,
But I just
at least it's fall instead of like the usual expansion release date. So you're good. You're good at it.
This might seem a bit weird, but it might be if it'll feel good like in a year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever. Whenever RPG follows up like a dragon with whatever they're going to follow up on that with, it'd be nice to be able to say like, all right, I've actually like I'm not skipping anything. Well, you can make an argument for like Dead Souls or whatever else, but like I am supposed to be here. Like I am not I'm not tripping over any barriers.
Hey.
I can Discord stream Dead Souls. I still have that on my shelf and a functioning PS3. If you ever want me to stream Dead Souls,
And it'll be nice to be able to like pick up on all the little like. So obviously now I kind of have to play like I have to like reverse it in my mind. Like if something is mentioned in Yakuza 3 or 4, I'm like, oh yeah, I saw this referenced in 7 or something like that, where I have to think backwards.
I'm a series veteran.
Yes, I got here in an unorthodox way, but me and probably several others because of the way they decided to release these on PC and Xbox. Anyways, that was my week. So just one game for me, Yakuza 4.
Just as a heads up to listeners that Cullen had something important come up, so he popped out, which is fine. It was great having him on for Bravely Talk.
Yep, we are obviously volunteers when it comes to this podcast, and we do it on Saturdays, which people have lots of things going on. 100% okay. So I guess now we got to switch over to who's left. We've got George, Adam, and Josh. Adam, do you have anything to talk about this week? You don't have anything listed on our little.
No, I just finished Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
How long did it take you?
I was a bit completionist with it, so about 100 hours.
Oh boy.
No.
I will say that like I talked about this a lot last week, so I'll be pretty brief here. But having skipped like 7 games, and the story is like the connecting story between Assassin's Creed is kind of bonkers and out there, anyways. But like some of the stuff at the end of Valhalla is just like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, it gets really out there. So,
like I heard how that game ends, and I'm like, oh, I know that. Not necessarily like how it came to that, but I know that.
Not to like spoil anything if anyone cares, but it's like the way that like all these Assassin's Creed games have like all these different like mythologies between Greek and Roman and Norse and Egyptian and whatnot. It's like there's actually like an ancient society, and they were also actually very technological, but something happened to them. And you get all these weird bits and
as
bobs
someone that hasn't played the Assassin's Creed series but knows a lot of people that do play it, one of my online friends has described it as Assassin's Creed is the Kingdom Hearts story for history nerds.
Yeah, it is very Kingdom Hearts. That is a very, very, very apt description.
Oh, George, excited.
I know, George is like, I'm getting extremely aroused. Come on.
I was just gonna say, I think because I know what happens in Valhalla. I always check this out. I never play the game, so I always kind of see what the ending is. I see what they're trying to link. I just want them to just man up and do not a future, but like a current Assassin's Creed. I would love them to do like a modern take on it. I know that's really unpopular opinion. I know people play these games for the history side of it, but I've always loved. Well, I loved the Desmond bits. I'm not massive on the newer characters, but I would love to see what they could do with the gameplay mechanics, but in like a big like high-rise city. That'd be awesome. I don't think they'll ever do it. I think this is always going to be a background of whatever Assassin's Creed game and what timeline they're in, but that's my hope. I think that's when I would jump back on.
I will admit there is a part of me that's like, maybe I should play the other ones, but I just think of how big of a time sink that would be. And it's just like,
dude, I can't do it.
Clearly, I should have segued to you about skipping games.
Yeah. It feels like Assassin's Creed games that like I'll play one entry like every 10 years at this point.
Like I said last week, I hadn't played since Revelation, and I was just like, let me try out this new one.
Yeah. And same here, and I haven't played since Brotherhood, and I tried out this one. Like like whenever I get back to this game and play like the rest of it, it'll feel like, okay, I'm good on Assassin's Creed for another like 10-15 years, man. This is a big game.
So you 100% done with it? I guess you got
Yeah, I am done. I am
season
done.
passes
Like I
to
will
the
no
show.
longer. Well, yeah, I
Oh.
guess I am situated to like when they do DLC stuff, and I actually did buy the Ultimate Edition or whatever. It's like whatever. I will get your season pass, and when they do like DLC stuff, I was like, I can jump back in for that. But I'm done for now.
Did you do all the Christmas content they added for a limited time?
I think I missed that. I was
Oh.
playing Neo 2 when that was out.
That's not completionist.
Wait, so they had like a seasonal event, like an MMO or a Destiny or something?
Yeah, they had like a Yuletide event like for Christmas.
That just
I
seems
was playing Neo 2.
What a time we live in. Yeah,
Yeah.
the single player
Yes,
game like
yeah,
having season.
yeah.
Well, I guess like games like Knights did that too. So maybe it's not that weird. It still feels weird. All right.
By the way, Neo
Someone
2 is amazing.
George, go ahead.
Yep, I feel like the massive outlier this week, which I guess isn't new. I usually am, but I've been playing Ys. We talked about it earlier. Really enjoying it. I think next week, I keep saying this every week, but I'm so close to the end now. I'm just going to get through it. So next week I'll probably talk about it again. So 4 weeks of Ys 9 in a row. But I decided to pick up Little Nightmares 2, and it was really, really good. Really short.
I don't know anything about this game. Give me the explain it like I'm 5. What is this?
It is a puzzle platformer in the style of Tim Burton, but if Tim Burton did a bunch of acid and just saw some really like creepy
It's
stuff.
a horror game too.
Yeah, it's a horror game. Yeah, that's probably the easier way of explaining it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say the thing is it's not scary like Resident Evil scary. It really doesn't rely on jump scares at all. It's all about tension and atmosphere.
Have you played Inside, Brian?
No, I've only played what was the one before that?
Limbo.
Limbo. I
Okay,
played Limbo.
yeah, it's somewhat similar to that, but like the premise of it is like you're playing like these miniaturized like characters, so the scale of it is like things that look like normal size to us would be much bigger, like on them because they're miniaturized. Like it's like Honey I Shrunk the Kids, but horror style.
Yeah,
Well, not that tiny.
they're you can. It depends how you view it. I kind of see
They're
it
like the size of a cat.
Yeah, you're like they're supposed to be kids, but I guess the twist of it is I've been reading interviews on it, and they say it's more like how a child would view growing up. I've seen that sort of take on it quite a few times. Which in 2, I guess I can't. I won't spoil it. I won't even talk about the ending. Besides saying it is crazy, and that's why I actually got Little Nightmares 2. I bought the first one earlier in the year. Well, I guess earlier last year. And I never finished it. I played like an hour of it, and I was like, "Yeah, this is cool," but it's not really for me. Like, I didn't really get into it that much. And then when Little Nightmares 2 was coming out, and they did like the demo of it, I tried that out and really enjoyed it. And I found out one of the twist endings for the DLC packs they released. I'll say it if no one like is particularly fussed. It's just really dark. So in the DLC for the first one, you play as another child. And you have like these 3 DLC episodes. You go through them, and then at the end, he gets turned into this thing called a gnome. They don't appear in the second one, but they appear in the first. And the ending of that DLC implies that the main character of the main game eats the character that got turned into a gnome.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah, they're chilled, like they're kids as well, and it's just like it's already a dark scene in the first game. But then when you realize that 6 is eating another kid, you're just like, that made me go, Jesus Christ, like that's really, it's messed up, but it's really clever. It's really cool. Like it's a cool twist. And Little Nightmares 2 does like a lot of stuff like that, where it's, there's big twists coming, and then when a big twist comes, it's still like, that's really clever. And when I finished it, I wasn't particularly scared throughout the game. There was maybe one scene in the hospital that had me like actually creeped out, and it's where these like little hands are chasing you through the hospital. And that kind of made me like sit up on the sofa, like get my legs out from anything that could grab me. But I went to bed and I was still thinking about the game and the ending. And I was like, wow, that's really clever.
I feel like I should say this just because nobody's gonna really know this anyways. If you want to play it, it's actually a Stadia Pro game right now. So if you have Stadia, you can play it for free.
Yeah,
Yeah, totally. It's awesome.
Yeah, I've watched some Little Nightmares too. Like people streaming it, playing it, like just having it on the background. And there's a really really cool like artistry like the atmosphere of it, like the way they manipulate the lighting systems and how it usually like there's like a lot of like hard lights at some levels, on it that's like it's really kind of striking, and especially in dark environments. But what really stood out to me when I was watching it, it's like there's like this school level in it, and like everything they do with that seems really cool, and how they start like it's not really like a horror game where it's like a lot of like jump out scares, but it's good at really building tension and like making you always aware.
Yeah, I'm somewhere in the middle of that where I appreciate both. I get quite a kick out of it. Jump scares, like it's a good thing to like show your friends, like, oh, look at this, hey, jump scare. But Little Nightmares 2, it's probably my favorite game of the year so far. Like I know a couple of weeks ago,
it looks really good. Like a friend of mine's been streaming it like on Discord, and I've been watching him, and it looks really nice.
It's just, but my only problem with it is its length, which I think it is paced really well, and it was always going to be a short game, but still, when I finished it in one night, one just 4-hour session, I was kind of like, oh man, like I'm so into this. I would love them to like take like 3 or 4 years making a third game in the series.
It's so difficult to like have those types of like horror games like last for too long without overstaying its welcome too.
That's true. Yeah, very true. And I think the twist of that is a game like the first thing that comes to mind when I think of a horror game is Resident Evil. And the difference with Resident Evil is that it starts off, you're always really underpowered and it's scary for the first couple of hours. And then the game never overstays its welcome because eventually it's basically just an action game and you're soon able to defeat the enemies you see. Whereas in Little Nightmares, you never get that chance. You're always running, you're always hiding. So I don't know, I can't wait for a sequel. I know I say this about like every game that I play, but I've been playing some good games, I guess.
Hey man, that's what it like. You enjoy something. It's like I want more of it.
And also, as a very me point, obviously I bought the collector's edition. You know, I like buying my collector's editions, and this is a really cool one. It comes with a little diorama of Mono pulling 6 out of a TV, and it's just like it's quite small, but it's like a really detailed diorama. And it's like the cheapest collector's edition I bought in a really long time. It was like £40 for me, so that's basically the price of like a normal game, and it just looks awesome. So
but it's not like one of those things where like the low price, like it's like you pay for what you get. It's like it's actually high quality.
Oh yeah, I would have paid more for it if I'd seen like the quality of it. I would have been happy to pay more. So I just feel like I've got a bargain here.
Cool, that's awesome.
So that pretty much that game just came out a couple days ago, right?
Yeah, I like I said, I played it in one sitting. I'm still thinking about it now. I'm half tempted to go and try and platinum it, but maybe I'll wait for some trophy guides.
There's like I think like a secret ending to it because after getting some collectibles.
Yeah, I've seen the secret ending. It's I don't really want to spoil it because
don't spoil it. Yeah,
it's really cool. It's really cool, and the implications of it are cryptic as ever. They're very cryptic. They're very think of it as you will. But it's the sort of ending that made me go straight onto a Reddit post and say, oh, what do other people think this means? And I love that. That's Kingdom Hearts. I love it. Just like, what does this mean? What do you think this means? What's going to happen next?
Do you think they're going to make a follow-up immediately after?
No, I don't think so. I think the way that this one connects with the first and also with the DLC and also like all the little spin-offs and comics, I think that maybe it's a complete circle. I think that they don't need to. I really want them to. I would love them to keep going like with these every couple of years, but I think that this is a sequel that elevates everything that the first game did, and I kind of want them to end on that. Like it's such a I don't want to say a perfect sequel because there are little issues, but it does exactly what I wanted it to do, and I don't know if like a third one could do that even more. Like I could get what I want, and it could be longer, and then that length could be a detriment. So maybe take some time off for it, Maybe a bit more, I guess.
Has the developers made any other game besides Little Nightmares?
Tarsier Studios. I don't.
They worked on Little Big Planet Vita.
Oh.
Oh, that makes it. Yeah.
That's cool. Wikipedia page: Little Big Planet, Little Big Planet 2, Tearaway Unfolded.
Oh, Tearaway was a cool game.
Yeah, the port of Tearaway.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Oh, they also did the Stretchers game for Nintendo Switch.
Strong studio.
What that is.
Yeah, but it's like the only reason I knew that about Tarsier is that I'm mutuals with someone on Twitter from there because I used to be really into Little Big Planet when I was younger, and like one of the people that used to post on the Little Big Planet Central forums followed me on Twitter because we were like friends on there. So that's why.
Small world.
Little world. Not a segue.
I was going to say that.
I still need to play that Sackboy game.
I mean,
That's really good. I like Sackboy a lot.
Well, who was it? Well, what celebrity said they'd like stayed up till 2 a.m. to play Sackboy Little Adventure? Was it Rihanna? Ariana Grande?
That is
I clearly do not have my finger on this pulse.
same.
But man, now I feel like I should pick up Little Nightmares 1 and 2 just to kind of support them.
Yeah, like I would, like I say, I would totally recommend it. I got most of the way through the first one, and that's even shorter. I think you can do that in 2 or 3 hours. So I think I'll probably finish that as well, just round it all out. But they're so good. I love my horror games, and they're some of the best, I'd say.
All right, and last but not least, we've got Josh to talk about a couple games that he's been playing. I'm not even going to try to make this a clever segue. Josh, go ahead.
Yeah, I can finally talk about my time with Persona 5 Strikers. My review's up on the site. Persona 5 Strikers is a spin-off of Persona 5 that takes place about half a year after the original Persona 5 ended. So it's not like acknowledging characters that were from Persona 5 Royal, just because I imagine of the development cycle, because Persona 5 Royal and this game were like in development at the same time. So it's hard to like kind of schedule around that. But I think, it's not a big deal. So if you play Persona 5 Royal, you can hop into this game and whatnot and not be totally lost. You'll be fine. This is primarily developed by Omega Force. And Omega Force is, infamous to a lot of people because they're the Dynasty Warriors studio and whatnot. So a lot of people characterize this game as like a Muso game, or having that like one versus many brawler type of deal. It's kind of that in the sense that like you still have like these light and heavy combos and how it resembles a Muso game, but it's much more like an action RPG that has that like action type gameplay, but there are many like Persona 5 systems around it. So just to set up the game, at the end of Persona 5, it's not a big spoiler that Joker goes back to his hometown with Morgana and whatnot, and the Strikers begins with Joker and Morgana coming back to Tokyo to go visit their friends for summer vacation and whatnot. And once they start, saying, "Hey, it's nice having you back and whatnot. Let's go have some fun, some barbecue and whatnot." Things kind of start going amiss pretty fast when they start learning that people's hearts have been changing. Again, someone's doing a change of heart on people. It's not the Phantom Thieves and whatnot. And so the very beginning chapter of Strikers, for example, focuses on this very popular stores representative and whatnot. She's a very cute girl, kind of like an idol type. And people are like becoming raving fanatics of her and whatnot, like to an unhealthy degree, getting obsessed with her, like breaking up like relationships, couples separating because their partner's getting obsessive about her to an unhealthy degree. And Phantom is like, this is kind of weird and whatnot. And so things happen here and there. There's this new smartphone app called Emma. And it's kind of like the Siri equivalent parallel. What's the Amazon one? Amazon has a
Alexa.
It's kind of like that. So instead of accessing the metaverse through the weird app that they had in Persona 5, they do it through Emma. So they instead of like trying to find like these 3 key words like in the original, I'm trying to remember what it was like. But instead, everyone has like a keyword to become your friend on Emma. So for some of them, when you enter that keyword, they get access to the metaverse through Emma. That's the way they justify it in this game. So when they access the metaverse, it's not a person's palace. They enter this jail, and this jail is a much more open area compared to Persona 5. It's not like it's not just like a school building like in the original. In like the very first jail you enter in this game, it's all of Shibuya. So it's a lot of open pathways, streets, and whatnot. And as they're navigating around it, they realize, oh, we have to go find these 3 cores around this jail to move on. And then just the whole same type of deal of like they send a calling card to face off against the boss. Instead of like trying to find a treasure in Persona 5, things are a little bit different in Strikers, where people's desires get stolen, and that's what makes them obsessive in like real life around this figure and whatnot. So they have to get their desires back from this jail. So as I mentioned earlier, even though there's a different battle system, a lot of like the flow of it is very much the same. When you enter this jail, you still have to sneak through shadow patrols. So you find cover at these marked spots, and you can ambush them. And it works very similarly to Persona 5. Once you ambush them, you have an advantage when you start a battle. But in this one, when you start a battle, it'll take place exactly where you initiated that combat. But it'll make like some sort of like pocket arena, so you obviously can't like run across the entire level for this battle. And dozens and dozens of enemies will spawn when you ambush someone. And anytime in the middle of combat, as you're doing combos on them with your light and heavy attacks, you can pull up your persona that'll freeze time. It's not like FF7 Remake where time will go very slowly. It's just like a big pause, and it's like, okay, you can take your time to analyze the situation and see what skills you want to unleash. And if it's like a damage skill or an ailment skill, it'll have like this AoE marker showing the area where it'll hit. So you can hit like multiple enemies with, say, like a simple lightning spell, because it'll still be a circle, and any like enemy in there will get hit. So just like in the original, when you hit an enemy's weakness, they'll be dazed, and you can do an all-out attack. Unlike the original, it's not like some sort of flashy attack where like you'll see like someone's customized ender screen if you beat them. It's like, hey, everyone gathers up, beats on this enemy, and then they'll either be dead or you continue the battle. And that's like kind of the big change from it. It's just everything's in real time now. You can actively dodge and whatnot. Just like in the original game, there's still a fusion system where you can not recruit demons. You, instead of recruiting,
they have like a chance of dropping their mask that you can like use. You can like add their components of their abilities to your attacks in some way. Yeah.
So essentially, when you beat an enemy, they have a chance of dropping their mask, and once you collect this mask, they just automatically join you. There's no like negotiation and whatnot. It's just like, okay, I got it, cool. And if you get like a dupe like of a demon that you already have, you'll like gain additional currency called persona points. And I'll touch upon that later, but just keep in mind there's a persona points in this game, PP and whatnot.
PP.
Sorry. Thank you. I'm thinking Pokemon.
Sorry, Josh.
I know you've been talking a bit. I do have some questions, but I'll let you continue.
Okay. So, where was I? So there's this fusion system.
Talking about PP.
Yeah, talking about PP. So yeah, so you can fuse like obviously the demons that you collect, just so that you go back to the same velvet room in your prison cell and whatnot in this game, and you can like gain new personas that way, just like in the original game. And like Adam alluded to earlier, it's kind of weird how they treat spells in this game, where you can manually cast them and it'll consume either HP or MP, just like in the game. But you can also use those skills in the middle of your combos, of your basic combos, like as a finisher. Like say I do a square triangle ender, and like at the end of that, this the persona that you have equipped will like cast like an ability that's like inherent to them. Like say Pixie at the very beginning of the game, Pixie always has Dia, and that's like a basic healing skill. So you can cast Dia manually on yourself or a party member, consuming MP, but you can also cast it for free without consuming MP, but it'll just be less potent. So if you cast it on yourself, it heals like 30 HP. If you were to like do it as an ender to your basic combo, you can cast it, but it would only heal like say 10 or 12 HP and whatnot. Just example values. So it's kind of a weird thing where you can actually like find like the right persona where and you can like just endlessly heal yourself and your party members. Like I know Principality is a very common SMT demon also in the Persona games where you can cast media after you do a string, and it's like, oh, okay, you can keep your party members healed constantly after the end of each combo and whatnot, and no MP. So that's a weird dynamic of where they go with it. Obviously, the one main benefit of casting spells manually is you can use any spell that like they've inherited through fusion. Like unlike the ones where they're only equipped with it inherently. Obviously, there are ones that they'll inherit through fusion, depending on how you fuse them and whatnot. And obviously, you always go with a party of 4 after a certain point early in the game. All the Phantom Thieves are playable off the bat once the game starts rolling. They have a new ally named Sophie, or Sophia, and her code name is Sophie. And she's essentially an AI, and she has been tasked to become "quote unquote" humanity's companion. That's all you know about her early in the game,
and that's all she knows, right?
That's all she knows. She's an amnesia, and so how they interact with her in the real world is, since she's an AI, she's just stuck in Joker's phone. It's kind of like James will understand this. It's kind of like in Steins Gate Zero, where you interact with like a character, an important character, but they're like you're talking to them through their cell phone. Yeah. And so that she has a weird dynamic with the crew, but it works as the game goes on. It's kind of jarring at first, but she becomes like a natural fit. And one of the other characters that I really love is Zenkichi, and he works for public security, and it's kind of funny. Public security in this game knows the identity of the Phantom Thieves straight up. Like it's no secret. There's no like, oh, who are the Phantom Thieves? Public security just knows. So Zenkichi tails the Phantom Thieves early on, and he's kind of makes them a deal of like, hey, I need your help with this, because it turns out like this change of heart thing is not only happening in Tokyo, it's happening all across the country, and they dub it the change of heart epidemic. So there are people in different cities throughout Japan that are just like exhibiting symptoms of like getting obsessive over a certain figure or individual. It's like something's wrong, unnaturally so. So obviously, as far as public security is concerned, like only the Phantom Thieves have this ability to change, to trigger a change of heart. So they're automatically suspecting like it's got to be them, but on some level, like they don't really have the evidence. So Zenkichi basically blackmails them. And he's like, okay, public security is on track of like just arresting you, but we need your help to get to the bottom of this case. So go travel across Japan, investigating this change of heart epidemic with me, with your help, and PubSec won't be on your ass. We're like, well, okay, I guess. So Persona 5 Strikers, for a very small part of it, takes place in where you've been in Persona 5 given Tokyo, but for the large part, it's a road trip across Japan in an RV that they get early on. Like, I think, what was his name? Sojiro has like an RV that they let them borrow. And so the flow of Persona 5 Strikers is you're going across from city to city, solving change of heart epidemics, trying to find like these they call them monarchs. Instead of palace rulers, they call them monarchs of these jails, and finding out what's their deal. And the nice thing about this game is that unlike figures like the first and second boss of Persona 5, or what was it, the Kaneshiro, unlike those figures in Persona 5, which were like very unlikable, very like, oh, this person has no redeeming qualities, they're just being evil for being evil's sake, essentially. Like, it's not really much more deeper than that. In Persona 5 Strikers, the monarchs there have a more nuanced take of like, oh, there are reasons that contextualize why this figure is doing this, and how that correlates and whatnot. And it's also cool that since this is an epilogue story from the Phantom Thieves, like the Phantom Thieves already went through their arcs, so
Yeah, can I butt in here real quick?
Go for it.
This is actually like one of the most interesting parts about the game to me, I think. I mean, the fact that it's like an action RPG is also like interesting on itself, but the fact that like in Persona games, a lot of it is like each dungeon, each villain, each chapter of the game is basically tied to like introducing a new character and their problem sort of thing, until you get to the very end. So like this is the dungeon that's Futaba's dungeon or whatever, and this is Makoto's dungeon, and like it sort of like works as like an introduction to the character as well as like a conflict surrounding them in a way. So in Persona 5 Strikers, and this is what you're getting at, which is why I butt in, it really interests me how it's just like you can have these new villains that have their own like personality and take that's kind of divorced from the character cast, and it may be a little bit more nuanced or a little bit more interesting and doesn't adhere to such a strong like formula. And the fact that the characters that you are interacting with throughout the entire game have all gone through like their preliminary growth, like their onset of their character arc, so you can kind of have them more on like an even playing field the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really interesting to me.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the nice things that where Strikers excels at. And also, it's a much more digestible game as well. Like, in Persona 5, you're at least spending at least 100 hours on that game to complete it, if not a little bit more, depending.
And a lot of that is confidants and side events and like kind of filling bars and things like that.
Yeah, and this game, it's a much more slimmer game, even though it's like I still almost clocked in 40 hours. That's still a way slimmer game than Persona 5, but I think it really works in its favor because I wasn't, I if this could be like a summer side story vacation type of deal, it doesn't need to be as long as the original game. It's kind of like a nice tie up to where they've gone and where they're going and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So what really like threw me off about this game, since you're stuck like on the main story for the most part, you'll hear a lot more voice acting because of the ratio of that. Like in Persona 5, there's still voice acting the main events, but the next main event not be for like another 20 hours. You might not hear like
rather than having 2 weeks of in-game just roaming around Tokyo doing confidants, there's none of that. So you kind of cut all that out. So you kind of go from one major story scene to the next. So yeah, that's sort of, I get where that would come from.
Yeah, and there's no confidants in this game, but that's fine. I think that's it. Really, there's really no need to be for a confidant system in the game. It just wouldn't fit, especially in the nature of like they're not staying at one place getting to know people. They're just like they're on a mission around the country. Like, okay, here. All right.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like you're going to like Okinawa or something. Like, hey, dude, like I'm like Joe Schmo. Like social link 1. It's like what?
Yeah, it just wouldn't work.
It just wouldn't work. They don't have a confidant system, but they still have like kind of that tune of like when you do something right with the confidant, like the little tune that it takes. So there's like this new bond system. It's not a confidant system at all, but throughout main story events or when you beat battles, you'll charge up this bond gauge, and every time you fill it up, you'll gain like some bond points, and you can spend those bond points on like not necessarily a skill tree, but like like this board of like things where you can enhance like your passives. Like you get more permanent HP bonus for all your characters, or permanent +1 to your strength, or +3 strength for all your characters and whatnot. So it's just another currency to pour more helpful things into. Like instead of actual lockpick items in this game where you you crafted lockpicks in the original game, in this game there's still lockpicks, but you level up your lockpick level because there will be some chests in some jails where it's like, oh, you need lockpick level 2, and it's like, okay, I just leveled that up instead of like consuming a lockpick item. So still little stuff like that.
In this game, you mentioned this, I believe, in your review and maybe in casual chat with us, you can revisit jails, and like sometimes you might have to for like a side quest, or do you ever have to like go back to an early jail? Like, oh wow, this first jail has like a level 10 lockpick, and you need to come back when I'm high enough to do that. Anything like that?
There are some jails where yes, they have like a lockpick level 3. It's like, oh, I don't have that at all yet. So you do have to revisit, like, if you're a completionist for treasure chests. There are some times where I just have to. You gain more levels after main story events for some of the these bond things. So
Right.
let's say lockpick level 3, I leveled it to level 2, and then it'll say unlock condition ? I'm like, do I need to do that from after completing a main story or a side quest? Because some side quest rewards are just, hey, you have a new level cap for this bond thing as well. So there are definitely some times where you have to backtrack. And one of my major grievances in this game, now that you mentioned, are side quests. There are a lot of side quests in this game that just feel like chores. Like, say you just beat this jail, and then it's like, oh, you have like 5 new requests, and all of them are like, hey, go back to that previous jail and go beat that boss again. Go beat like these enemies that you were just in the jail that you were at, and then go find this like collectible or these collectibles in that previous jail that you were at. And these all unlock like after you just beat that too. So it's like, come on, man. You could have given this to me.
So you can't be efficient and try to like knock out side quests as you're doing the story. It's like, nope, you got to do one and then the other.
Yeah. It's that's kind of annoying. But it's a fun ride. I think people, who are Persona 5 fans, they shouldn't miss out on this, because it feels nice, like seeing these characters and this cast not being so downtrodden by and so being so swept about like the messy narrative in Persona 5. Like it like there were definitely some points in Persona 5. It's like, oh, what the fuck are we doing to this story? This is like it's a mixture of a nice road trip and like an intriguing like narrative around it too. And like I said, Zenkichi, very good character. I really like Zenkichi, and I think a lot of people will too.
How long did it take you to finish the game?
A little under 40 hours, and then after you're done with the game, there are more new challenges after that too. Like there'll be harder versions of the bosses, that you can challenge.
40 hours is short for a Persona game. So
I'm happy to hear that. Like that,
Yeah.
I'm probably going to get this when it comes out, and that reassures me that
I think you've convinced me to try this out, because as someone who, I'm not like a major super duper Persona fan. I played like all the games, but when I saw like, oh, Megaforce is making a Persona spinoff, I'm like, oh, it's just gonna be like another Fire Emblem Warriors or a Hyrule Warriors. And I played a little bit of Age of Calamity over the holiday break, and I was just like, man, this is just not for me. But knowing that Persona 5 Strikers is really not that has me much more interested in it.
It really helps that like there is, outside of like selecting past jails, there's really no like main menu screen that has like a stage select option in the menu screen. Like it's just because that's really what really throws me off about some of like the third-party licenses that Omega Force has for their third-party IP games, and like applying like the Muso formula that they have on them. It's like it just feels so formulaic, and like, oh, it's just like a stage select, and you get some of these recognizable characters, you need to throw them on a battlefield. And it's like, yep, that's basically has all the identifying traits of a Dynasty Warriors game that like either you will or will not jive with at all. This one just feels like the main driving force of this game is its main narrative, and it's presented much like it was in Persona 5, like how these characters interact, how the story and narrative flow together. It's really like the only parts where like you get a jive of like that Muso formula is just some of it is like through like the basic attacks in normal battles and whatnot, and that's not really that egregious as well, because like you have all these Persona systems or these systems from Persona 5 to really spice it up. Like there are definitely like some cases in this game where, unlike Persona 5 Royal, where it was actually a decent challenge and I was only at normal difficulty, like you can go in hard and merciless in Persona 5 and be totally fine as long as you're exposing weaknesses. In this one, you can expose weaknesses, but that there are still a lot of like fatal things that can like
there's that. This is like one of those very baseline things when you're comparing like turn-based RPGs versus like action RPGs. When you turn up the difficulty in a game like Persona 5 Strikers, you have to know. I'm imagining you have to learn how to dodge. Like you can't get hit. Whereas in Persona 5, like a turn-based game, it's more like strategy. Like you can't dodge. Like
you don't even need
on
to
command. So
that's a funny thing about Strikers. Like you don't even need to learn how to dodge in some cases. Some of it just comes down to how well do you know how prepared are you for the upcoming fight in terms of like Persona Arsenal? Because Joker can, like just like in the base game, can switch up Persona 5 attributes on the fly depending on his arsenal. Like some will be absorbing nuclear while weak to fire, or another like strong to ice and like reflect.
So I imagine that if like you see certain enemies, like I better switch to Persona A here real quick, and now I got to switch to this persona while I'm taking on this group because they can do this element or whatever.
Like the harder fights in the game that like one of the optional harder fights in the game that I faced like against, they did a lot of nuclear attacks. So I was like, oh, I'll just go switch to this persona, and nothing really threatening about what this boss is doing to Joker personally, because like he'll just like either null or absorb it, because that's just the inherent persona attributes that he has. So I don't have to worry about Joker. It's just all my other party members who are stuck with their personas and their attributes and whatnot. And that's a really cool aspect to it, where you can actually just plan around. You don't have to be like a dodge god or whatever to get through some fights. It's just sometimes it's just all about planning. And I guess I haven't really touched on this either. It's like you can manually control anyone in your party as well, and they all play very differently. Like some of them have like power up attacks, like Sophie, for example, your new party member. She wields dual yo-yos, and like her unique ability is she can actually charge them up and like give her a faster attack speed and extend the range of the yo-yos and whatnot. Meanwhile, Yusuke, he's very
that's cool.
Yeah, and Yusuke, for his like move set, he has the ability to like go into this counter stance at any like physical attack that comes his way. He'll like kind of do a slow-mo in time and like do a fancy EI counter slash, and you'll see a lot of blade lines slashing through enemies out of that and whatnot. It's very and you can actually like improve and enhance characters the more you play them, because they'll unlock master arts the more you play them, and that'll add more to their arsenal or moveset and like increase like their properties. Like one of the master arts might be like, oh, this this character can now follow up their triangle finisher and like launch this enemy into the air, and you can follow after them and continue your combo midair. Or the other one, like for Haru, I think she has this move where she like does the Diablo Barbarian spin move, or like Link's spin move. So like hers is like, oh, you can actually now hold down like the triangle button, and all her finishers will go on longer. So she'll like spin even longer, just because you've been playing her a lot, and it's very effective and very apparent where it goes. It's really cool.
That's cool. So like a character doesn't necessarily just get old after playing them, because you're unlocking they're getting either new abilities or enhanced abilities as you play them. So that's cool.
Yeah. And one of the character's traits also like has interesting like gameplay systems, where like this character will go into this mode where it'll drain health constantly, but it'll power up all his moves and whatnot. And it's very devastating, but you're taking a cost for it. And you can exit this mode at any time, so it's like a defensive stance almost. So it's really cool. Like even though this game is relatively like low on its roster size compared to like other titles that have gone through the Muso treatment, it feels refreshing and nice because they all play very differently, and it's very faithful to Persona 5's style of like exploration and storytelling. So I'm not really like missing much in terms of like, oh, like it's not like another one of those third-party licenses that went through the Muso treatment like in a bland manner. Like a good chunk of them are like decent, but this is Omega Force at another level, and like really shows the potential of like them really working closely with Atlas.
It feels like all of like Koei Tecmo's teams are just popping off recently.
Yeah.
Like obviously, I don't know which team it was specifically that worked on Dragon Quest Builders 2, but a few years ago they did that, which was just actually fantastic. Good. You have Persona 5 Strikers, you have Neo 2, which just got the PC port, which obviously, like everyone I've seen that's been playing the PC version has been enjoying it, and obviously it was like in our 5 best games of the year last year. But like everything, like and Atelier Ryza 2, like us, they're popping off too. It's like just really good times to be.
House was primarily developed by Koei Tecmo.
Yeah, very very strong studio right now.
it's cool to see these like not gigantic. I don't want to say like second tier, but these guys that seem to have like a downer period of
They're
time
in a
like,
growing
the PS3
phase.
era. Yeah, it's cool to see like more actors entering the stage and creating some quality game after quality game.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Brian. You said you had a question earlier.
I was gonna say, I think when you were talking about Persona 5 Strikers, is that the only Persona game that I've played is Golden, and then I think I played the first Arena. And I guess the way that Persona 4 had like poorly received spin-off after poorly received spin-off, at least to my impression, based on the Arena series, and I guess maybe the dancing series were well received, but they just felt like, you know, fun extras. I guess like when Persona 5 Strikers was first announced, like years ago at this point, because it took a year for it to come out over here. I guess I was just like, oh, of course they're going to be doing like the whole gamut of Persona 5 spin-offs now. Like I immediately kind of like discredited it, like, oh, of course they're doing this. Like this is requisite. But it seems like this might be the strongest quote spin-off that they've done based on your impressions.
I'd say so, yeah. But like in terms of like in terms of like how faithful it is to the actual flow of the game, yes. But like but I still have very like I don't know if it's like the strongest overall because it's an entirely taken a different genre and like
Yeah,
past spin-offs have undergone genre shifts too, and it really jived for a lot of people. Like the Persona 4 Arena fighting games, you know, they jived a lot for fighting game players. Like I really like those games a lot. I like them for their gameplay systems more so than their story. Like I think a lot of their stories are kind of.
I thought the story.
I kind of agree with you in terms of like. I think if you're talking about gameplay or story, like I really like the Persona Q games. In fact, I like those like probably more than the main line. But story has nothing to do with it, like at all.
Yeah.
So, but it sounds like the story here and the characters here are like actually a highlight. So
yeah, I was very surprised that the story in Strikers was like really pretty good. Yeah.
So it sounds like it's a game more built for like both the gameplay fans of that style of game and also Persona fans. Where like if you're just a Persona fan, maybe it's hard to recommend Persona Q if you're not a dungeon crawler fan, or Persona 4 Arena if you're not a fighting game fan. Where here it's like, hey, if you're a Persona fan, this is a good almost sequel in terms of narrative for Persona 5.
Yeah.
It's a different style of game.
Even for Muso fans, this is like reaching new ground for Omega Force because Kite and I, Kite, one of our contributors at the site, like him and I are pretty like not big fans of like Muso games, but like we play them and we enjoy a good chunk of them. But we always talk about like, you know, they Omega Force could do better, and with Strikers it's like they're finally like reaching a new ground where they're being faithful to the game while introducing new concepts to their usual formula, like just having the ability to switch up, like, you know, your personas on the fly and changing attributes, and like giving new ways to vary up the gameplay, just like by including the demon fusion from the Persona game. Like this is like really cool, and this is not like a big sprawling battlefield with always like, you know, enemies everywhere like your usual Dynasty Warriors type games. This is very faithful to how you would explore a Persona 5 palace. This is just sneaking up on enemies and like, you know, making sure that you're not detected, because it still has like that detection meter that'll kick you out of the dungeon if you reach 100%. There's not like the way you would play a Muso game. Essentially, you're playing a Persona 5 game.
Any other final thoughts on Persona 5 Strikers? Like you've mentioned several times, we do have a formal review up on the site that is basically Josh's long form thoughts on this game, if you want to dive further into his write-up.
Yeah, I went pretty in-depth into it, try to make it very easy to read to people, because I think it's weird. Like, this game, unfortunately, gets the bad rap of, like, people see the Omega Force label and immediately dismiss, like, I don't want a Muso game, man. Fuck that. It's like, no. Definitely give this game a chance if you're a Persona 5 fan, or if you're a fan of, like, Muso games. Like, you know, it's a weird high barrier of entry because it does take place after the events of Persona 5, so it does somewhat expect players to have beaten Persona 5 or gotten a good chunk into it. So that's the weird thing about it. But I think there's a lot to like here, and I think once people get their hands on it, they can decide for themselves whether it jives with them or not. I'm not going to tell you, hey, this is the game that'll like save the Muso genre or make non-believers into believers. I'm not going to say that, but I'm saying this is so far out from the usual preconceptions of Dynasty Warriors and what people dislike about them that like it would be good for them to at least give it a go. I know there's a demo of the Japanese version up on the eShop and PSN Japanese stores. If people want to like get a very just a glimpse of what it's like. I haven't played those demos myself, but I think people would be missing out if they're already big fans of Persona 5 and just like decided, hey, I don't like Dynasty Warriors games, so why would I bother with this game? I think it would be a big disservice to that and to themselves.
All right, I know that you've been speaking for a while, but I do want to hear what your thoughts are on this next game you've got listed. It's a game that we brought up a few weeks ago when it was first announced for a surprise localization. Kowloon High School Chronicle, a visual novel / dungeon crawler that originally released in 2004, was it? Came out just a few days ago. So tell me about this game.
Yeah, just like stealthily released on the eShop just like maybe 2 to 3 days ago. It's like, oh, that finally came out. I'm very, very early into it, so I'm not like crazy, like deep into it or anything. But this is a very neat title, and I was speaking to it with a friend of mine, and he says, "Oh, this is like the precursor to I think the title is Tokyo Twilight Ghost Hunters." It was like a similar type of game a while back, at least a few years ago. And that was like a spiritual follow up to this game, and I was like, oh. Because this game feels so unique in the genre. And so Kowloon High School Chronicle starts out with a dungeon crawler section like what you would find like in Etrian Odyssey or Persona Q or any of the experience games where you're like there's a first person perspective and you're moving tile through this dungeon. And it starts out like in Saudi Arabia, and you're basically exploring these ruins with a colleague, and you're part of this society called the Rosetta Society, I think, and you're tasked with kind of just like fighting these ancient artifacts for all you know right now. And right away, it's very striking because you have like this device with you, which is very comparable to what was the SMT4 gadget, Adam, where you access stuff?
I don't remember what it was called.
Yeah, you have. It's kind of like that arm device. Yeah, I think it was called the Gauntlet. It's kind of like that. It's called, but this one's abbreviated to HANT, I believe, Hunt, and that's where you kind of interface with a lot of the systems of like how you find out tutorials, there's an enemy glossary in it. It's very reminiscent of that. So you have this like interface with you that you can bring up like these options, but it's also a user interface where you can see like your general HUD and what makes you be able to see the systems involved. And the systems are, you have these 2 modes, searching mode and hunting mode or battle mode. And you'll know what mode you're in in the top or in bottom right corner, and it'll show like these like 3 tiles essentially with you. And in search mode, it's very basic of like just interfacing with like objects that you find in first person. And then sometimes you'll run into these enemy encounters in first person. It doesn't go to like a turn-based battle or anything like that. It's like you see these enemies on the tiles by you. So you have to switch into battle mode. And on the fly, you'll have like this AP system on you, and you have to select a weapon from those tiles at the bottom right corner. So at the very beginning, you have like this gun, a sword, and a grenade, and you move around in battle mode, consuming AP. So like I move a tile forward, it'll consume like 5 AP. I move another tile forward, it's like 5 AP. And then I look back, and it move like looking, into different directions on a tile doesn't consume AP. But then you face an enemy and you select, like, say, the gun, for example. It'll have a reticle on the screen, like not in real time, because every time you just move someplace, it consumes like a quote unquote turn or your AP. So battle's not moving in real time. It is like you're taking a turn and consuming AP during that turn. So you select a gun and you have a reticle on screen. You highlight the enemy with that reticle, and then it'll show their health bar, and the reticle will turn red if you're highlighting over the enemy. Then you press A, for example, and it'll fire, and that consumes another 2 AP, fire 2 AP, and whatnot. So it's kind of like not a not real time battle system, but a first person turn based system, but you're consuming AP during that, so you have action points during your turn. And
it sounds not exactly but it sounds like a good comparison to Kowloon for a more modern game would be something like Deathmark.
Maybe
I was thinking a very, very different game, but I was thinking of Valkyria Chronicles, where you have turns, but within each turn you have to spend.
Well, I meant the game as a whole, with the kind of dungeon RPG aspect of it and whatnot, and puzzle solving.
Yeah, so I'm just getting deep into the battle system because that's the thing that really stuck out to me. When I was going through the tutorial of it, because you're switching between the searching and hunting mode. The searching mode is very basic early on as you're going through the tutorial. It's showing you, hey, you solved this puzzle by finding this artifact or this puzzle piece. You place it on this pedestal and you make sure all these statues are facing together. It'll open the door, and then in that next room, it'll show you, okay, there are these 2 statues that are misaligned. You have to push this other statue to align it to the other one and make sure they're facing a certain way, and then stairs will appear, and then. Or not stairs, an island platform will appear. And then as you're moving through it, you have to jump to that platform, and then there'll be a grappling hook point where you can unleash a grappling hook towards it, and then walk along that grappling hook line. It's very basic, but it's a nice way to spice up exploration and whatnot. So, as you're going through it, you learn that hey, you can there are puzzle elements where you do a little bit of alchemy. So as you one of the tutorial rooms is there's a gold lock on it, and then the tutorial marker says, hey, in a very cryptic way, you have to fuse these 2 liquids together to move on. I'm paraphrasing, but that's what it basically says. So you get these 2 liquids from the treasure chest, and that's basically showing you can mix these 2 together and then splash it on the lock, and then that's how you progress and whatnot. So it's very, simple but effective type of dungeon exploration and whatnot. And I don't know how much of the game is this dungeon exploration, because after you do that tutorial area on the dungeon crawler aspects, it switches to a more visual novel, early aughts, actually mid aughts, visual novel, where I don't even know what's a good a visual novel is old or was made in a very early era where the backgrounds of it is of real screenshots. So say you're going around the school and the background image of it is an actual hallway in Japan. Yeah, and then
you mean a photograph?
It's a photograph. It's a blurry photograph of it. Almost. Yeah. So it's a blurry photograph as used as a background, and then it's drawn over it for the characters. Or there was this weird one where there's this character on a medical bed after you were rescued early on, and it's a blurry screenshot of medical devices in the background, but then it's drawn over it with a stylized art style, IV drip, and this character on the medical bed. It's been a long time since I've played a visual novel that adopted this art style, because a lot of early visual novels around that turn of the millennium era did this and whatnot. And this, I don't think it's fully voiced, but it switches to that visual novel aspect, and things happen at the end of the tutorial. You get rescued by these representatives of the Rosetta Society, and then they give you basically a mission hey, you have to infiltrate this high school in Japan because we think there's some weird shit going on around. So, concerning ancient artifacts and whatnot. And where I'm at right now is you basically get introduced to some of the characters in this school. I imagine we'll play a role earlier on, and as you're going throughout the school, you see like a layout of the school as you're moving around. It's almost reminiscent of like the very first Sakura Wars game, and like the overview of that, and like these two little markers moving around each like room as like you're giving the school tour. And I think one of the cooler aspects about this game is there are sections during these visual novel sections where you'll be asked to like respond with an emotion. And how this interface works is it'll give you like this cross like icon, and then at each branch of the cross is like an emotion and the severity of it. So like at the top of that cross, it's like joy and then love. The left is like somber.
I want to be honest and say I'm kind of lost.
Okay, so say a character says, like they say something about like, oh, I really like books, or like what do you think? And then this after they say that, this cross will appear on the screen, and you choose an emotion, like one out of like 8. I'm like doing math in my head. One out of 8 emotions. So like this cross will appear on screen, and then at the top end of that, it's like joy or love. At the bottom's like anger or hatred.
But
and
why
like,
is it a cross?
This is the way that so you can choose them easily. Like it's like a branch.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So like, say if I wanted to just choose joy, I just would tap up. If I wanted to choose love, I hold up. Or
okay.
Yeah. And or you can choose not to respond at all and just let it time run out and whatnot. And I don't know exactly what this affects right now. Like you hear a little jingle if you I don't know if you respond correctly, but there are definitely times where I respond like with joy, and it's like dun, 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 or it's not like the Sakura Wars noise. I just made the Sakura Wars noise unconsciously, but it has a little jingle like that. But I don't know what that actually affects early or later on, or if it affects anything. But it's just basically you're responding with an emotion, and people will respond back like, oh, like you really like that, cool, or I don't know why you're so pissed at that if you responded like anger or something. So it's kind of neat because like the way, I don't know how they do it in I mean it's probably much more simple in Japanese, but how they do it in the English version is like they kind of stylize each letter of it to like kind of overlay onto each other. Like joy is like JOY kind of on top of each other, but it's very yeah. So it's not immediately obvious right away of like what emotion you're looking at until like you take a good look at it. It's like, okay, that I'm choosing love. Yes. So you kind of have to like, you have to be kind of on your toes because obviously time, because you can choose not to respond at all, and you have like maybe 5 to 7 seconds to respond, and you have to kind of respond not accordingly, but the way that you want to. So it's you have to kind of like suss out like what emotion am I actually choosing here.
So is it like the Toyota logo where it's all the letters overlaid on top of each other?
Kind of, almost. Like it's not like directly on top of each other, but it's like JOY, but like very squished together, almost on top of each other. Very
weird
squished.
Design or weird decision.
It's such a weird thing. And also when you're designing your character in this game, after you get saved, the way they introduce like your character sheet is kind of like almost like a school application, almost like they actually have like a portfolio of you, and like you're selecting, oh, what's your name, what's your height, what's your weight, what's your blood type, what's your favorite Japanese school club. It has like all these options from like the athletics club, the gym club, the go home club, the karate club, and I don't know what the hell that affects, so I'm just like, oh, go home club, I like going home. And like a skill that you're good at, and like there's all these attributes like mathematics, astronomy, or firearms, or not firearms, archery, and whatnot. And it looks cool. I don't know what the hell it affects, but there's definitely like character traits and attributes and some sort of character progression in this game. And I guess later on you'll get like party members that you can be grouped up with in dungeons. That like you don't like directly control them, but like you can use character skills when they're with you and whatnot. It's a very bizarre game. I don't know what to make heads or tails about it yet. It has a very eerie vibe to it, which is kind of cool. There's a kind of like a morbid things happening behind the scenes, even though it's kind of like cheerful on the surface. I don't know. It's such a weird game. I don't know what to make of it yet. I'm so early on.
I'd be interested to see like what James's or Adam's opinions on it would be for both like the visual novel or the dungeon crawly aspects of this game.
Thanks, Brian.
I want to play it. It's
Well, I
just
meant,
like too many games.
To collaborate with yours is what I meant.
Yeah, I know. I'm just kidding. Yeah,
I mean,
it's like it's a busy season. A lot of games.
We're all going to be too busy in Bravely Default 2 in a couple weeks, or Persona 5 Strikers. Any other final thoughts on Kowloon High School Chronicle?
I'll keep on playing through it and keep on plugging away at it. That's all I have for now.
Awesome. One of those one of those little surprises that no one was expecting. If a couple people play through it and really dive with it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I really dig the presentation. There's after a certain point after the tutorial, and you do like your character stuff. Like it comes up to this like this almost anime opening type of deal, where it's introducing the game with like flashy visuals and like the title card and whatnot. And you can tell it's very reminiscent of like the Cowboy Bebop opening in the way it presents. It's really funny.
Took some inspiration, maybe.
Oh yeah.
And before we go on to like our topic section, which will be shorter this week, there's not too many things. There is one more feature on the website that I want to shout out. This is something that James wrote up about why he hates what he can't. Let me start over. I hate that I can't talk about why I love Labyrinth of Galleria. So if you've been listening to this podcast, James obviously played through this game about 3 months back, and spoke about it. Yeah.
Well, more like. Yeah, 1.5 months, something like that.
Last year. And he spoke about it a few times. Obviously, this is following up from Labyrinth of Refrain, Coven of Dusk, which a couple people on staff had thought very highly of, and it seems like that carries through to this follow-up. But a lot of it is tied into very particular narrative stylings and basically spoiler,
Well, it's not even just narrative stuff, but to really get into the details would be to spoil it. And that's why I was writing this, because it's like I really wanted to do a review for this, but it's one of those games where so much of the actual like later game experience they didn't really showcase, and there's a reason for that. And if I went into details about what's like waiting for people, that kind of spoils it, when it's clear that part of what really resonated with me in the game was not knowing that these certain things were coming and being surprised by them.
So basically, it's the sort of game where you do not want to read any sort of review until after you've played it. Is that kind of the right way to think about it?
Yeah.
So we've got that feature on the site for just like a particular take on a very interesting game. We still don't have any sort of official localization info for that, do we? Anything?
Nope.
I didn't.
We
know
don't technically have anything, but we do have like some people may or may not be affiliated with NIS America saying expect 2022.
So basically, nothing through official channels. All we know is that it didn't really sell very well in Japan. Well, I guess we will stay on top of it if something more concrete comes out, because it sounds like it's definitely worth finding or getting a hold of if it manages to come over.
Yep.
All right, George, are you awake?
I'm still here. Don't you worry, I was enjoying that.
What do you think about Kingdom Hearts?
It's okay. I don't know.
Oh,
Freeze.
Okay. Yeah, I think my opinion lines up with yours. It's fine. It's all right. All right, so yeah, Kingdom Hearts will be launching on PC on March 30th.
Yeah,
and this is everything. This is HD 1.5 or 1.5 plus 2.5 remix, 2.8 final chapter prologue, Kingdom Hearts 3 plus Remind, and then Melody of Memory even. All of these are coming on PC March 30th via the Epic Games Store. So lots of different... but what?
They're very expensive.
Yeah,
for what they are. Like, I love Kingdom Hearts. I don't even need to say that. There's a stupid opener, but this is ridiculous. Come on, like £60 for, is it 1.5 and 2.5 together?
I think 1.5, 2.5 was $40, but the rest are $60.
It's actually kind of amazing because in terms of like how much you're getting, 1.5 plus 2.5 is quite a bit more than 2.8, but it's cheaper.
And it's like
older, but still.
I could see maybe saying $40 for that first pack would be worth it, because that's like more than half the series, really. But then like $60 for 2.8, which is like very short and not a lot there.
And not great.
It's basically the prologue, which is only a few hours, a movie of the Kingdom Hearts key back cover stuff, and then Dream Drop Distance. I guess you're paying a premium for that.
Whereas the first bundle, if you don't follow Kingdom Hearts, you might be confused by all these bundles, but they always lay them out to try to help you. But the first bundle has 1 and 2 plus Birth by Sleep plus Chain of Memories, so it's like 4 games for less money.
And then 2 cutscene packs.
And then 2 cutscene packs.
The thing is, I would love to say that these games are worth it. And obviously I think they are, but there's just cheaper ways to play this, guys. Like, I know that the modding scene is going to be really cool. Like, I'm sure the randomizers are going to be maybe totally, like, oh yeah, like mods like that. That'd be really cool, I'm sure. But I don't know. The money I've spent on the Kingdom Hearts series is like probably more than all of this combined. But I still,
this is so weird because you can get some bundle of the Kingdom Hearts games like $25 on the PSN.
Yeah,
right?
it's the complete thing, right? Except maybe Remind.
There's like the story so far that has like pretty much everything. If they did the story so far and Melody of Memory, maybe even that I'd get that if it was like $60 each for those two. I'd kind of understand that, but it's just separating it even more just makes me 2.8 isn't worth it at all. Got to say.
So if I remember right, story so far was everything leading up to Kingdom Hearts 3, but now they've got the all-in-one package.
Yes,
which
that doesn't include Remind, right?
No, Remind's expensive as well.
It doesn't include Remind, and it doesn't include Melody of Memory for what it's worth. But still, $25 versus 40 plus 60 plus 60 minus Remind, like quite a big difference.
This is ridiculous, and you know what the shitty part is? Like the Square Enix took up this deal to get money out of Epic. Plus, they know people are going to pay for this full price.
Oh yeah,
So maybe I'm off base here, but like the fact that this is an Epic exclusivity deal with Square Enix feels kind of weird to me. Like, is that like the biggest publisher to do an Epic exclusivity deal?
No, IO Interactive, Hitman 3.
Oh, Hitman. Like, I was thinking like there was Outer Worlds for a bit, but that was like private division, so that was smaller scale. There's some like the Metro games and a few things like that, and Hades, but that's like an indie developer. So I was wondering, like, what are these? What big companies are taking Epic exclusivity deals? Like, I guess Square Enix did.
Yeah, I mean, I guess not on the scale of Square Enix, from what I can recall.
Like, I sort of understand, like, if you're a smaller developer and if Epic is literally going to give you a significant amount of money so you can, have a better game or a better working situation, then yeah, I understand it. But it's like Square Enix releases so much stuff on like Steam and elsewhere. It just feels kind of weirder in this case.
I guess my opinion is basically like Epic likes to give this kind of altruistic, we're doing it for the little guys, we're doing it to give them a minimum number of purchase copies so that they're guaranteed to be in the black. I mean, I almost feel like it'd be refreshing if they just said, yeah, we're making this is good for business, that's why we're doing this, we want people to download our store, and people will do that to play Kingdom Hearts, and be like, all right, like I would appreciate that hypothetical honesty, because I will say, when this was announced, even though I've played these games, I have thought about like maybe I would play these on PC, like. And there is no official confirmation about the status of like timed exclusive, how long people.
They haven't really mentioned the exclusivity at all.
Yeah, people have speculated or try to look at trends, or it's probably a year because that's what most of them are. But a few games have been way shorter than that in terms of what store they're exclusive on, and nothing's concrete. But
yeah, no one really knows whether this is timed or permanent or not. Like it's just, but we'll know 2 years out. Like, did Kingdom Hearts come out on Steam yet? I don't know. Go check.
Yeah.
Nope,
Yeah.
because it's permanent. So yeah,
I
it's
could easily see myself dropping $40 for the first pack just to be like, all right, I want to crank this up, see what it looks like at a really high resolution and a really high frame rate, and maybe mess with the mod scene if that kicks off.
like I don't really mind like it being on a different storefront. It's more so that it sucks because like the Epic Game storefront is still not at like a great level, and there's like no great quality of life inconveniences to it, unlike Steam, where you have like automatic cloud save backups, and you don't have universal controller support, unlike Steam. So
not every game has cloud saves. Not every game has achievements, and the games that do have achievements, there's no easy way to even see them through the launcher. It's really, really rough.
And
it's one of those things where like you might think in the moment, like I don't need any of that. Like I just want the game to play. But then like I'm playing the Yakuza games on the Windows Store. And similar thing where I'm like, hey, if I delete these games, are my saves backed up? I have no idea. Like on Steam, I don't have to consciously think about it.
Well, here's the thing about that. On paper, they should have cloud saves because it's Xbox Live and all that. The problem is that when I played Outer Worlds on my desktop, it would not properly back up my save, but it would back it up on my laptop. So you're running into Windows 10 shenanigans where it's basically held together by duct tape.
Well,
also,
I didn't mean the specific about the Xbox thing. I didn't mean like that specific example. I just mean like I'm just using that as like a launch pad for saying like in general. You might think going in like, oh, I don't need it. Like the game still runs on my computer. I'm just clicking a different icon. But then you start thinking about these other things like, oh, do I have to consider this now? Do I have to like put mental energy into thinking about my cloud save or even about mods? We talked about the modding scene, but I guess Steam Workshop's a picture, stuff like that.
When I want to play through Final Fantasy 7 through 9, I'll probably play them on PC, and it's like oh, I can play them on Game Pass, but if I want to get the retranslation mod for Final Fantasy 7 because the official one is still like kind of rough. How would I get that working on the Game Pass version? Is it even possible to get it working? Stuff like that.
Anyway,
you just have to cross your fingers that developers will just have native controller support as well. Unlike Steam, where you have to think about it. Like when I got Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2 last year, I was like, oh, do they support controllers off the bat? I don't know. And thankfully they did, I think. Yeah.
It's kind of on a similar topic. I've been playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which I've been playing it on PC. It's not on Steam. I'm playing it through Ubisoft's. It's called Ubisoft Connect now. And these are like sort of things you kind of take for granted with Steam. Ubisoft Connect, I've learned, does not play well with like sleep mode on Windows. I had like weird bugs where if I woke my computer from sleep, like I would be in the Ubisoft Connect like application, but I wasn't logged in, but I could still launch my game while not logged in. And then separate from that, it sometimes just had random issues like we cannot synchronize your saves or we cannot synchronize your achievements. And it was just like weird stuff where I found myself just closing the app and reopening it. And it's just like, I'm not saying that never happens with Steam, but it just kind of felt like I'm kind of glad Steam just sort of works most of the time.
Yeah, and also for me, like whenever I run into any like troubleshooting issues on Steam for a game, I just go to their like forum on Steam, and usually people have answers very easy to find off the bat. And for a lot of these other storefronts, they don't have like dedicated forums, for a specific game that like you have to go kind of like go around the internet and Google a little bit and be like,
does Epic still not have forums?
I don't know, dude. I don't think so.
They don't.
And
I think it's like funny when like Steam paid forums for like
I'll never
games.
forget when Hades was first like unveiled as an Epic exclusive for the early access period, and they said we are going to Epic because it is the perfect place for our early access game where we have to have a link to a Discord because there's no native integration for discussions and feedback.
And the argument people use for the forums is like, oh, they're cesspit or whatever, we don't need them. But like, here's something that was relevant to what I was just talking about. Yakuza's 3 and 4, based on the localization, had to walk around some licensing issues for music. And if I go to the Steam forums and search, there's like patches and updates that fans have put the original music back in. I like how even if they don't integrate with the Steam Workshop, and I can do them on my Windows versions, I still gotta like go to the Steam forum, search for these updates. Like, oh, here, here's the, here's the steps for how to replace the original music back into the games, if I even can on the Windows version. Like, and there's people that have install issues or bugs or crashing. Usually, those are the best place. Yeah, maybe you'll have to sift through some opinions, but just use the search feature for your specific issue, and you can almost always find people who have already troubleshooted it for you. I think that they're useful personally. Incredible.
Yeah, I really like them. So yeah, it's a weird thing, but I would like to see Kingdom Hearts on Steam.
Yeah, hopefully that these niggling issues with how receptive you are to using the Epic Launcher, whether you don't care at all or care a little or care a lot, hopefully that's the extent, and we don't have like issues with the ports themselves being like subpar.
I don't even mind supporting like people who took the Epic deal to go through the store exclusive. I really like Tony Hawk Pro Skater, so I was like, oh, this is a really good one of those. So that's like the first game I actually went and installed the Epic Games launcher because I really, really wanted to support Vicarious Visions on a damn good re-release of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2. And I'll probably do it for Axiom Verge 2 as well because I really like the developer of that game. I really like the first Axiom Verge. And it's like indie developer, very small, and you can see very clear why he would take the Epic deal and whatnot. And like, sure, I'll support that developer. Like, I don't mind.
I feel the same way. It's not that I mind the Epic Game Store. Like, I'd prefer to buy a game on Steam just because of all the amenities and whatnot. I think I have been on record saying that the only like exclusivity deal that really pissed me off was the deal with Samurai Showdown, and that's just because of the way they said, "Oh, we are not going to have exclusivity." Just kidding, we are having exclusivity, and I don't think it's actually been put on Steam yet, even though it's been over a year.
But it's definitely one of the black marks on SNK's record right now.
Yeah, I like to think that my even issues is overstating it, but for me, it's all about brass tacks. What do you get and what do you give up here, and less like of a philosophy thing. Some people like philosophically won't install Steam or not Steam Epic, and I'm like, I don't really care about that. But I'm thinking about like how will this actually affect me playing this game, whether it's replacing music changes or cloud saves or whatever. And to me, those are not issues I can just brush aside. Those are things that are important to me. But for Kingdom Hearts, I will probably I will probably get that first 1.5 and 2.5 combo pack, even if it is paying a bit of a premium for it. And that's not an Epic thing. That's like it's that price on Xbox as well. So
if I was going to go for one game, I think it'd be Kingdom Hearts 3, just because I think, like you said, like playable Kyrie stuff like that, the modding possibilities there are really, really cool. That's just me.
Yeah,
I mean,
and it's on Unreal Engine, which hopefully means it'll translate to PC pretty well. And that's probably like where the business relationship between Square and Epic Games began originally. I think one of the producers mentioned something on that. Adam,
they mentioned the demo, the 2.8 or the 0.2 demo was where that was the first Unreal Engine stuff.
Right.
I'm just saying that if the modding community doesn't allow for a playable Donald Duck and select Zeta Player as like a thing you can cast in battle, then what the fuck are we doing?
Yeah, if someone has to do that, Zeta Flare is just like one hit KO.
One of the magics of PC ports is that there's going to be somebody that makes a mod for Kingdom Hearts 3 that as soon as Donald casts Zeta Flare, it just uninstalls the game.
I want to cast Zeta Flare on Sephiroth, whether that means you backport Zeta Flare into the older games or put Sephiroth in 3. I want to see that. Or how about both?
But I guess moving forward, like, what does this actually mean? Like, with this exclusivity deal between Square Enix and Epic, does this mean FF7 remake when it comes to PC? Is that an Epic Game Store?
Well, people were expecting some sort of announcement on those lines from the concert that was literally yesterday. Long story short, it didn't happen, but I still think that maybe once we get to the April timeframe where that year, passes from the original launch, maybe we'll see that. At this point, I don't think anyone should be surprised if it is.
Yeah, same here. Like especially even with FF16 and Project Althea, could potentially be Epic Store exclusives, whether they're timed or permanent.
It is kind of interesting though, because also this week, and this is a little bit of a tangent, but like Final Fantasy 12 just went to Game Pass. So it's not like Square Enix has shut the door to working with Microsoft, but it's kind of like...
Though there is some weird stuff about that, where it was only... So for Game Pass in Japan, it was only up for 1 day. It's already been taken down for Japanese players.
Why?
I don't know.
It's like a weird... It's a weird exception. Like, I guess we'll put it on Game Pass for you Westerners. I don't know. For you guys who are playing it in English.
That's 1 day.
I wonder what happens if you like downloaded it. Probably means you can't use it.
Yeah, I imagine you get. What happens?
You might be able to continue playing it if you just change your Microsoft account to a Western one, because you can change the region pretty easily.
Okay, so what happens? Let's say if you're playing a game and you're in the middle of the game and you're playing it, and that game gets taken off Game Pass while you're in the middle of playing that game. What happens?
That is a great question.
I don't know.
Because clearly, if you close the app, you wouldn't. Oh, the future we live in. Clearly, if you close the app,
there's like an intrusive message as you're playing. It's like, oh, this game is taking down Game Pass, abort game, and that's the only option. Yeah,
you have 60 seconds, and a countdown clock appears or whatever.
Oh shit! I would love that.
I am never quitting you, Final Fantasy 12. You'll be running in the background forever.
I had that similar conundrum when I had Phantasy Star Online 2, and it was like on the Windows 10 storefront. It's like, I don't want to quit this game because it might like do bad shit. Yeah.
I'm not sure if I try and start this again, if it'll just uninstall itself.
Maybe it's the best way to go. Maybe it's telling you something.
All right, Kingdom Hearts on PC, end of March. We will reconvene then, I suppose. See how it turns out. We got some news on the Kickstarted game that is a spiritual successor to Suikoden, Eiyuden Chronicle. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Has a publisher, Eiyuden Chronicle, has a publisher now. It will be published by 505 Games, and they released a short little trailer basically making this partnership announcement.
Fear.
Why do you say that?
505 Games does not have a great track record when it comes to Kickstarters, or in general. So, fear.
Yeah, 505 Games is okay with like stuff like Death Stranding that didn't have a Kickstarter and like a relatively smooth launch on PC. Like there wasn't like any like crazy significant.
Well, 505 are also the ones behind the asinine Control Ultimate Edition. Yeah.
So yeah, 505 Games
they don't have a great track record.
Yeah, okay, so let's kind of go back down. Besides Death Stranding for 505 Games, like they've had
Indivisible.
The whole Control issue it continues to be weird. Where initially the first like warning signs was, hey, if you wanna play Control on next gen consoles, have like a native next gen experience on them, you can't do it with a vanilla version of Control. You have to do it with Control Ultimate Edition, which was like a re-release of Control, but with all the DLCs and whatnot with it. And that edition is only going to be the one that would natively run the native versions of the next gen consoles. It's like, okay, there's not a real great reason for that, but they're like, okay. And then people got Control Ultimate Edition, but then they announced like they delayed the version of that of next gen consoles on that, so they deleted that release. And then it wasn't until like January, just even a few weeks ago, where there's like, oh, we're gonna release Control Ultimate Edition for free for PS Plus subscribers for like the monthly games. So that leaves people who bought Control Ultimate Edition in hopes to play it on their next gen machines. Like, what the fuck? Why did we buy this then? If you're just gonna make it a free game on PS Plus. So that's already a shitstorm. There are other issues with 505 Games. Indivisible is a weird one. Indivisible is one where there was a big pipeline of like future content to come into that game, and then Lab Zero.
I wouldn't necessarily say that the Indivisible thing is 505's fault.
It's not 505 Games' fault, but they're attached to that project. I don't know what happened to the physical goods of that.
There was the weird thing with Indivisible where was this 505 Games where the Switch version released just randomly?
That was probably 505 actually.
Yeah, it just released randomly, no announcement or anything. It was just like, hey, it's out.
And Lab Zero at the time said, hey, we didn't okay this.
Yeah, they did. They were like, we had no idea it was going to release, and that's just like
missing some of the updated features.
This was for all the Lab Zero drama where Mike Zymont kind of went off the rails on whatever happened there. They got Lab Zero shut down. There's a whole story.
I'm pretty sure the thing with Mike Z isn't that he went off the rails so much as people finally realized that no, he's always been off the rails.
Yes, yeah. Thank you for the correction, but yes, he's always been off the rails. But that premature Switch release was definitely probably on 505 Games' end. They were also behind the Wonderful 101 Kickstarter, right, James?
No, they were not.
Oh, okay, that's a different public.
That was, I believe, was that ever indie? The company involved was the one that had the kind of controversy. They published Bug Fables on PC. They did Dongan, that's it. And they were like removed. The information about them was removed last minute, so maybe they weren't involved. The Wonderful 101 Kickstarter was a mess. But from what I understand, that was mostly Platinum. That was the problem, because like I know the real reason why I wasn't able to exchange my copy on PC for a Switch copy, which I've gone over it before. It was bullshit. They advertised the PC version with a case saying PC DVD, and they said, "Oh, it's a Steam copy." And it's like, yes, but you can still have Steam copies that install through the disc. That's not a good excuse. That wasn't fun.
How about was 505 Games Shenmue 3?
That was Deep Silver.
No, I think you're thinking Bloodstained was the other thing they did.
Bloodstained, yes.
The Bloodstained turned out well. Bloodstained turned out well, yeah. Except for the Switch version, that was just a development issue. I don't think that was necessarily 505.
So 505 Games, they did have some past weird problematic stuff with how several things we listed were treated, but they did okay with Dead Stranding. And
Dead Stranding was good.
Yeah. So there's not like an automatic fuck, but definitely one to keep out of, because this is such a promising project in the works that you would hope and pray that their involvement doesn't mess up something weird down the line when it gets released years and years later from now.
Yeah, it's currently slated 2022, but at this point it's just kind of like I don't put a ton of stock of that either. Just it's far out.
Yeah.
Just yesterday we got a new trailer for NieR Replicant version 1.2, etc. And this is about 10 minutes of gameplay, which we can actually glean a lot from, because it's the first time we're getting an extended look at the updated art style. We can listen to what they've done to the soundtrack. More on that later. We can hear about some of the new English voice acting, which has been reworked seemingly. So there's a lot we can glean from this 10 minutes. It's the Baron. What is the temple called? The Baron Temple.
The Baron Temple. Right.
So unfortunately, I'm not the best person to talk about this because I have not played the original, even though I'm interested in playing this remaster. So I will turn it over to, I guess, Josh or Adam to fight over what you think about what you saw about.
I mean, it was a nice confirmation. Yeah, it was a nice confirmation that the English voice cast from the original English release is coming back. Laura Bailey as Kaine, Liam Neeson as Grimoire Weiss, which is
You mean Liam O'Brien?
Liam O'Brien, sorry.
We'll keep that in.
Yeah, no, Liam Neeson Weiss would be something.
That'd be fucking awesome, actually. You know what? Liam O'Brien as Grimoire Weiss, which is one of his best performances, hands down. So it's really nice to have them back on board. I think since it sounds like people are saying Zach Aguilar is young brother NieR. Which he did.
Has he done a lot of game roles? I know he's Byleth, but Byleth doesn't talk a lot.
He's
done some anime stuff. Oh, Campanella. Okay, but it's a different voice. So
yeah, I think I forgot. Does he do the English voice for Tanjiro and Demon Slayer? I think people.
He does.
Okay, so that's
it's sort of a similar character. It's like I am brother must protect sister sort of thing.
Yeah. So
I've been ignoring all the NieR Replicant stuff because I know if there. Well, I'm pretty sure everyone expects there to be like some like wacky. Oh, it's not just the remaster; it's got more to it, and you're never going to actually showcase that because like it's like everyone knows it's probably going to happen, but of course they're never going to outright say it in the marketing. But I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop.
I'm still like almost for the memes. Admittedly, I'm still expecting like New Game Plus. Now you can play as Papa NieR or something like that.
Oh man, that'd be crazy. Other than that, people have been seeing. There's a lot of like comparisons to like the original cutscene, how it's presented versus this new one. Obviously, this one has like a much more brighter color template, much more clarity. Obviously, the graphical fidelity is much higher than the original one. And also, I think one of the funny ones that people pointed out is like there are some alterations to the script where like kind of, especially specifically Kaine, like she swears more in this version, which is really funny. Like I
how do they turn her up?
Yeah. It's like, oh, okay, it's like, people usually are like, oh man, they can't believe not being faithful to the original. Meanwhile, this is like falling upwards of like, oh, she swears more. Hell yeah.
One thing I also thought was kind of funny is one of NieR's lines in the original is like, "Where'd you bastards come from?" And he just sort of says "bastards" like casually there. And I think in the new version it's like, "Where'd you come from, you bastards?" And it's just kind of like it's kind of weird. It's like I kind of like the original. He's just like, "Where'd you bastards come from?" He just throws it out there. But yeah, they just changed some of the lines, and one thing I'm kind of okay. So they're changing some of the lines, and they might be revoicing the entire thing. Because the original game actually had like it wasn't fully voiced. There was not a lot of it was like voice cutscenes, but a lot of the other dialogue was not. And I believe it's going to be basically fully voiced now. But I wonder, like lines like Kaine's not infamous, but like that well-known line when she's swearing at Vice. Like I wonder if they're going to redo that or keep the old one. The old one's kind of iconic. It's the opening of the game.
Like if I click a new game and within 3 seconds she's not saying "Weiss, you asshole"
or
dumbass, sorry, then what the fuck are we doing?
Well apparently NieR which is it Gestalt, which is the one that was the apparently
Gestalt
in the what?
Gestalt is Papa NieR, Replicant is brother NieR.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what I wanted to say was apparently in Replicant in the Japanese original that's not the opening. So it kind of depends. Like, do they want to keep that opening for this game for the people that played Gestalt, or do they want to be more faithful to the original Replicant, or is it going to be something different? I've understood that it's kind of like no one really knows for certain how they'll open it up.
They also released like soundtrack samples of like some of the tracks like Snow and Summer and Kaine. I have this another version or another edition. I don't know if these are the ones that will play in the game or not.
I've heard a lot of people aren't high on how the new rework tracks sound. I don't know if you guys are feel as passionately about that.
I mean,
they're different.
Yeah, they're different. It's hard to say out of context, like how they would play in context, depending on how this game portrays, certain scenes when they play. I don't have too big of a. They're not as egregious as like say the Demon Souls 2020 problem of like them just totally reworking it to something that like you can't even recognize at all. Like they're still like they're more orchestrated. Obviously, I don't know how I feel yet about that. I really need to play the game to see where it is at. I think the fun one that they released, the soundtrack sample of this bonus track that's in the collector's edition. It's like remixes of like tracks in the game. They're not going to play in the game, but there's like alternate remix takes of like other artists on them are really fun. Like there's like a metal version of like what was it? I forgot which song it was. There's some really fun ones in that video.
People are also doing some side-by-side comparisons about how the characters look, especially younger NieR and Kaine. And certain people say that the new ones aren't as faithful, though I guess I don't really have an opinion on that because I haven't really played it. It might just be people not being used to the updated looks.
I mean, being honest, the original visuals from NieR they're not. like the art style is good, but some of just like the actual like model quality isn't
Just like the
great.
fidelity.
Right. So it's like they're kind of muddy, kind of clunky. I don't know.
Some people are like, NieR looks like 9S now, or whatever.
That's a weird one. I mean, Brother NieR looks like it to me. He looks fine. I think the unfortunate one, because of the footage and scene that they chose to highlight in this one, is Kaine, because Kaine has some like weird angles when she's about to go ape shit on the boss that was showcased in this gameplay. So like they're taking like stills of like all weird angles that like kind of
the usual take a still shot of it and be like, oh, this looks awful, when it's like in motion or something. It's like
yeah. So it's hard to really say for sure whether it's like quote unquote better or quote unquote worse on that. But you know, overall, I like the footage. I really liked what they showed off. Obviously, the combat is way less stiff, way less stilted. Like unlike the original, like the original is fine, but like it's definitely clunky. And this one just definitely flows better and moves better. It looks like very similar to Automata, but not like. But it's not like it doesn't make like Brother NieR look like an android like sliding across the ground. There's still definitely like a certain weight to him.
I don't know if you guys can glean this from the footage, but is there anything you can really see about the combat? Or not really?
The combat's sort of hard to judge without actually playing it. I mean, it looks a lot smoother.
Yeah, like there's definitely a lot more like particle visual effects going on in combat. It's a lot more flashy for sure. But like in terms of like actual mechanics, like no, like Grimoire Weiss has always been able to do all that stuff, and like and all the moves like aren't like crazy different. Just the way movement works, it looks a lot smoother.
I'm definitely interested in playing this
for sure.
So I'm one of those people that I liked the original NieR, but I never really fully dealt with the gameplay, which is not a very uncommon take. So I kind of want to see like how I take to the game as a whole, if it just like is a nicer playing experience. So
I think the one of the weird niche things I'm interested in is you can still quote unquote cheat at the Moonflower quest in this game. In the original, there's this Moonflower that you had to like raise in it, and it took a lot of days. I think it like took maybe 2 full weeks, I want to say, to fully complete this quest.
Right, I remember the flower.
Yeah, and then because you had to wait for this flower to grow and like tend to it, and like you had to be in the. I think you have to stay in the game for it to actually like make progress in it. It's not like a background timer type of deal, but you can cheat at it by just changing your system time and date to automatically make it grow like instantly and whatnot. So I wonder if they kept that in, or you have to legit do it properly now, no questions asked.
Well, it's kind of cool to finally see some footage of this because it's coming out in April, and it was like announced, and then we had a few other follow-ups, but not a whole lot to go off of. So this was kind of our first look at all those aspects in voiceover, combat, music, graphics, all that stuff. So I don't know if it means the marketing will ramp up and we'll see more and more as we approach. I assume so.
Yeah, I mean it's 2 months out, so they have to.
Yep. And that's it for real big news. We have a few other little bit pieces to talk about. Trials of Mana just was announced from Square Enix that it has surpassed 1 million copies in physical shipments and digital sales. So basically, I think that seems like a really strong showing for a somewhat niche series of a remake of a game that not many people played.
Awesome game.
Yeah, it's a really cool like remake of that game. I'm kind of surprised it reached the 1 million mark. I wouldn't think it would for some reason. I was like, oh, to me it's still like a niche series, which it is, but seeing it be a million seller, really, wow.
It's cool that we're at a place that even these like niche games can reach the million mark.
That just means like they're hopefully Square Enix like gives that team the budget that it needs to like continue like making these cool remakes of the Mana games.
I know some people have been saying like they want to see a remake of Legend of Mana, which Legend of Mana is a really cool and interesting game in my opinion. But I'm also just like, how about we get like a brand new Mana game? It's been long enough. So
I don't know, but are they interested in making a new Mana game, or like something that'll just for surefire sell?
Didn't they remake one that was like really, really bad? Or like
Secret of Mana wasn't very
I
good.
heard about that. Yeah.
Well, Secret of Mana is a good game, but the remake wasn't good. Wasn't that generally it?
I would argue it's not actually a good game.
Oh.
It's a well-loved game. I won't get into it.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest travesties.
I feel weird for saying this, but the main reason why I want to play the Trials of Mana remake is I've heard people say that the boss fights in it are basically feel like Trials in Final Fantasy 14. With the way that the damage marker, like AoE markers and whatnot, pop up.
At least you can experience it like with like a good difficulty now, since they added like a harder difficulty in that game, which it's sorely needed.
Oh yeah, that game was way too easy. Like something you don't even think about.
Yeah, but I was coming to this when you were talking about the Secret of Mana re-release. Just the remake OST of that game, man. Fucking I still get mad at it. Hate it.
So that game obviously didn't make our top 10 last year, but it sounds like basically it's still like pretty good experience. If maybe not as far-reaching as some of the bigger titles, the heavier hitters. So,
Square Enix did mention even before it hit 1 million that that the game surpassed their expectations. So maybe that means for whatever the next. I think it's safe to say that there will be a new Mana entry. Like it seems like it's done well enough and beyond expectations enough that they're going to have another entry. What if it's something brand new or another remake, or how much budget they give it? I don't know, but we'll see.
I have no idea what a brand new Mana game looks like, to be honest.
It's been forever. Like when was the last new Mana game?
One
of the DS ones? It's a long time, because they had the mobile version of the first game, which was ported to like Vita and elsewhere. Then they had the Secret of Mana remake, Trial of Mana remake. So it's been a long time since there's been like a brand new game.
Yeah, I have no idea what the hell it would look like at this point.
Rise of Mana iOS 2014, Circle of Mana.
Rise of Mana.
Heroes of Mana Nintendo DS 2007.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
They'll make a new Mana game with Platinum Games.
Oh yeah.
We've got a new trailer for Black Myth Wukong. If you don't know what that is offhand, it is the Chinese developed game that first made waves splash last year in August, I believe. Let's see. Yes, August 2020, from Chinese developer Game Science, which basically looked like really high budget, super, it almost looks like Dark Souls meets Journey to the West. So we got a new gameplay trailer for it earlier this week, and it still looks like really good, really creative. The whole trailer is like gameplay with like the UI turned off, kind of like what they did for the Demon Souls marketing over at Sony. So it was really cool to see that this game is still progressing and wasn't just going to be like one of those games where they show it off and disappears for forever. It looks really unique and different and cool, and it's got a kind of like an art style that you don't really see many other places.
Didn't they say I don't know if I just saw this one in the comments, but didn't they say the release date is looking like 2023 at the moment?
It's one of those games where I'm not expecting it anytime soon, but if we can kind of get this drip feed of updates just throughout the next couple of years, I'm okay with that. Better than it going dormant, I suppose. Well, maybe not better for the game, but better for people who are interested in the game. But it's just cool that this game came out of nowhere. It looks really interesting, and it's coming across, at least in the trailers, as really well made. Obviously, we'll have to judge for that in several years, but I don't know.
It looks like I need a way more powerful computer to run this game. That's what it looks like.
Time to camp out at Micro Center for the 3090 or whatever.
This game looks stunning, phenomenal visually, and it's cool. That's it's like following this mythology. I love Journey to the West stories. It's such a cool endless story. It stands the test of time, and and having a character having a bow staff as the main weapon. It's not a lot of games do that.
this shows like how uncultured I am. But I look at this and I'm like, man, I wish Goku still used the power pole. Because obviously that had its own Journey to the West.
Look, when Dragon Ball Fighters came out, I was like, I wish they would like release a Goku with a bow style. They got a GT Goku, then everyone cried. I'm like, yeah,
that is monkey's paw if ever I heard one.
Dude.
But yeah, we got a new like 3 minutes of footage, and it really is like it's not a lot of cinematics. It's pretty much aside from a few other little snippets, it's like basically just gameplay footage after gameplay footage. It's really kind of cool. But yep, we've got that up on the website. Again, the title is Black Myth Wukong. And the last bit, this is something that I guess George will have to speak to. We got an RPG, Steven Universe Unleash the Light, is releasing for PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, and Steam in just a couple days, February 19th. So, George, what is this game?
So, this one really came as a shock to me. There have been 2 Steven Universe games. Well, there's been 3 Steven Universe games made over the past couple of years, and all of them have sort of been... They're very simple, like Paper Mario-esque RPGs, just told in the Steven Universe, universe. And then this latest one came out, I believe it was 2019, and it was just on Arcade. So I was like, yeah, no, I won't play that. Like, I just don't vibe with phone games. I think we've talked about it before. I've never been able to pay attention to them. But it looks like they're bringing it to consoles next week. And the reason this interests me so much is, one, it's an RPG, so of course we'll probably talk about it. But Steven Universe is probably like second in my favorite things of all time. Like if we're saying Kingdom Hearts, yes, it is second to Kingdom Hearts, and I think I mention that every week. Like I don't shut up about Kingdom Hearts. This is just fact. So Steven Universe, I adore it, and I can talk about it, and it's valid. And the last one they did that I got to play was, I think it was Save the Light, and that was released on consoles as well. And that was actually a lot of fun. It was really glitchy and quite simplistic, and you could kind of tell it was budget, but like it captured Steven Universe really well.
Is this Unleash the Light a sequel to Save the Light? So after you saved it, now you unleash it?
Now you unleash it, yeah. And it's also, I don't know, this won't make sense to you guys really, but it's a bridge between Steven Universe and Steven Universe Future, which was an epilogue series that was released last year. So it's like, it's canon story. It tells, it's specific. Man, I'm going to go into the woods of this here, but it's a specific tale that they've been telling about light prisms that doesn't really have anything to do with the show. It has like the characters, it has the world, and it is canon, but it's sort of like the finale of that. So it finishes off that story, but it then leads into Steven vs. Future, which is such a good epilogue series.
Always that needle that you have to thread when it's like, yes, it's canon, but we can't make it like too impactful so that people who are only, people who aren't gamers and want to watch the show aren't like lost when they transition from the one series to the other. Like, wait, what did I miss? Oh, I got to play this Steven Universe RPG now? Or whatever.
They're really, really fun little RPGs. And I never expected this to come to console, because from watching the gameplay of it on phones, it's very like, it is even more simplistic in movement than the other games were. I don't really think there's like a massive open world like there was in.
Wait, so does it like?
So I'm.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I'm just super curious how it's going to play. I haven't really looked into that much, and I'm so excited to talk about it. I just hope it's good. I've heard good things about it from the limited sort of interaction I've had with it. So,
well, you'll have 1 day to play it ahead of next week's podcast.
I'm gonna marathon it all night.
Yeah, I want you to show up next week, like with a gallon of coffee and you like half asleep,
just half asleep. Yeah,
talking about Steven Universe Unleash the Light.
It's
always cool. Yeah, always cool to see like these tie-ins for series and IPs that have a big or passionate fan following. Before like phone gaming became ubiquitous, but like when HD gaming was just around, like in the late aughts, it felt like there was like this period of time where all the licensed games kind of like went away for a bit. I don't know if that's me like rewriting history or just not.
No, totally.
And it's just cool to see like we're at a place where that is sort of coming back. They've got the avenue with the with a handheld, whether it's a Switch game or a phone games that eventually getting ported.
I mean, you know what happened to those games? They all went to mobile. That's what happened.
Yeah. So did this one. Like that's why this is so surprising. I just
one of the more recent like discoveries I made like a few days ago was like there's like a Tom and Jerry's mobile game that's a gacha. I'm like, what the fuck?
What?
Yeah,
I want to see that discussed in our Mobage channel here in our Discord. I want to know the drop rates for the SSS Jerry costume or whatever you call it. You can tell I have no idea what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I was like, oh my god, someone made this.
And I would not be surprised if like the publisher of that game is like, yeah, we're raking in millions on this Tom and Jerry gotcha.
Hell, dude.
Anyways, Unleash the Light for Steven Universe / Steven Future fans. Already available on mobile, coming over to all the consoles and PC next week. And that covers it for this podcast. And we're at the 3-hour mark, so thank goodness. That's what we get for starting and continuing with so many people here. But yeah, we have a bunch to look forward to, especially Bravely Default 2 and Persona 5 Strikers.
Yeah, just big shout outs to Cullen once again. He had to leave for personal reasons earlier, but it was a real delight for him to come through with us for a bit and discuss his initial thoughts and impressions on Bravely Default 2.
It's kind of interesting that both of those games ended up having for Bravely Default 2, it's only had its preview embargo lifted, not its review embargo, etc. But sometimes these games you can't talk about until like the day of or after they release, and those are still both like over a week out or a week out at least. So not often that we have two games in a row that are like that with the kind of the favorable discussion embargoes lifted or whatever you want to call it. So we're looking ahead to those of us that haven't had the opportunity to play them early.
The weird one's going to be like when that NieR Replicant comes out, and then like if there's like an embargo of like what you can discuss on it, it's like, oh no, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the original NieR.
Yeah, it's like I'm not spoiling this game. This game's been out for a decade. What are you talking about?
Or it's like it's less common these days, but like a game that's like localized. Like I'm not talking about East 9 before it's released. I'm talking about the Japanese version of East 9.
Well, I guess you could have used that. You could have used that argument for Strikers, admittedly.
True.
Anyways,
yeah, I'm talking about Personified Scramble: the Phantom.
Yeah, I'm not spoiling anything. I know Japanese. All right, let's start wrapping this thing up. We've been here long enough. If you've made it to the end, thank you for staying. We're so glad to have people listening. And if you have any feelings about any things we've discussed, feel free to leave a comment. We do read those. You can go ahead and visit all the features that we talked about, including the Bravely Default 2 preview, the Persona Strikers review, or the feature about Labyrinth of Galleria, all up on our website. All the trailers that we talked about are all also there at rpgsite.net. We do have a Discord a Discord server that you can get to by hitting the link at the top of our homepage. You can go to the Mobage channel and talk about Tom and Jerry if you want. We do have a YouTube channel at rpgsite.net. We've had a few hiccups there in terms of uploading content, but we do have plans to get back to it. We also do have an Instagram, RPG Site, obviously our main Twitter page at RPG Site. And other than that, we will be back next week with the Tetracast, as we seemingly always do. So until then, take care, stay safe. We'll talk to you next time.
And enjoy your chocolate.
Bye, guys.
On or alone. Enjoy.